How did a cheater get caught by their significant other? I've been cheated on and cheated with, but never cheated myself. Each time the cheater just fessed up and told the truth. Except for my 6th grade boyfriend, Chris. I found out from everyone else in my middle school that he made out with some skank at the movie that he had invited me to when I'd been busy. Screw you, Chris. Totally over it, though. I forgot to go back and mark the episodes as unwatched. I doubt I'll ever get the truth on it, but my ex, we were together for 6 years, engaged for a year and a half, went on a work trip to Vegas. We were 8 months away from our wedding. Half of it was paid for, like the venue, videographer, photographer, flowers, catering. All of these had deposits. The dress was bought and paid for. Then she got back from the trip and said, "I don't love you anymore." Kicked me out of the apartment and had a new guy move in 3 weeks later and got engaged to him a few months ago, about a year and a half after the split. Either she had been cheating for a while or thinking about it, or both. Either way, it was the best thing that ever happened to me while simultaneously being the most painful thing I've ever experienced. I am much better off now and much happier and healthier as well. I'm finally over it, although it took about 2 years. She did hurt me pretty frickin' badly, but I look back and realize that I hated myself. Because I was severely overweight and wasn't in any position to love someone else the way they needed to, because I didn't love myself. Life will crap all over you sometimes, and you either wipe it off and learn from it, or sit and play in it and get used to the stench. And no one wants to be around you. Your choice. Went to the gym. Oops, I forgot my headphones. That's cool because the house is only 5 minutes away. Pull up and see my work buddy's car out front. That's weird. Walk into the house through the open garage. My son was coloring at the kitchen table. I ask him, "Hey bud, where's your mum?" He points up the stairs. Walk to stairs, hear moaning and movement. Up until this point, I'd suspected but never had proof. Knew I had to go look and catch her, or she'd say I was overreacting and tell me it wasn't what I thought. Walk upstairs and I hear them in the spare bedroom. Walk into the room and say, "Well, this is awkward." They both freak out and try to grab clothes and tell me that nothing's going on. I walk to my car and have my ex-buddy chase me out and tell me to hit him. I go to my command, I'm in the military, the next day. I report him and have the command force him to call his wife that day and let her know. I'm now divorced and much happier. What a weird cluster of psychological phenomena here. From trying to deny the affair whilst hip deep in each other, to your friend trying to make you punch him. Was it guilt, or was he trying to preemptively counter any legal stuff with like a physical assault charge? It's very weird. About 20 years ago, I caught my ex, not screwing, but in bed with another guy, on Valentine's Day, with a dozen roses in my hand. What a frickin' C-word. Fighting would get you kicked out of college, so I told the much smaller guy once I saw him off campus, I'd kill him. 15 years and worlds later, and I'm at an engagement party at a bar, and some friends come up to me and tell me the guy over there is scared shitless of me, and thinks I'm going to kill him. I look over and start laughing and can't stop. It was so far in the past, but for some reason that guy remembered it like I'd sworn an oath to avenge my family. It felt good. His fear was redemption enough. I caught my ex when we were both standing in the examining room getting his UTI treatment. Doctor came in and said gonorrhea. He lied for a whole 2 or 3 months, I imagine. Even lied about how he got it. Tried convincing me that he'd swiped his member in some mystery fluids in a gas station toilet. What the frick? When he realized I wasn't frickin' stupid, he tried to drink random bottles on the doctor's shelf. He started attacking himself. He fell on his knees sobbing and tried grabbing my hands and begging for me not to leave. He threatened to take us both out that entire night and attacked me for close to 9 hours while I was trying to pack my bags and leave, with a final spirited, violent attack in the driveway. I just spoke at his sentencing this Thursday. He's a convicted felon now, and I hope he's grown from all this. I got caught because I was smiling at my cell phone too much. My partner made this assumption. I had to explain that I was just using Reddit. My fiancée left me 2 days before Christmas. She told me she needed to move out and get space, that she was moving to her friend's house. This went on for a week until, because we have a family Apple plan, I looked up her location. She was not at her friend's house. I'm now a single dad of a 1-year-old and she's moving out west with that guy. Merry Christmas, baby Jesus. My dad was recently caught cheating on my mum after 27 years together. While using his laptop, my mum noticed Facebook had said, "Hello, Mike Long, can we log you back in?" My sweet mum still had no idea he'd been cheating until my teenage sister broke it to her that he was using a fake account. That only opened a whole other world of nasty surprises. Love you, Dad, but also, I hate you. A brother of mine caught his wife. Her phone would always be going off and she'd hide it. He got curious, looked into it, and found some guy had been texting her for a few months. She said she was going to stay home because she had to catch up on homework over the weekend. My brother and I went on our hunting trip and he told me about this. We never left the city. We went to my house and stayed there till it got dark, then drove back to his neighborhood in my neighbor's car. She sent him a picture of her at home saying she was going to bed early that night. Well, we snuck close to the house after a car parked down the street and a guy walked to the house and let himself in. My brother was fuming at this point and wanted to beat the crap out of the guy. I settled him down and told him to think about the long run. We snuck up to the house and using the night vision camera got videos of them bumping uglies in the living room. My brother wanted to confront this guy at this point, so I did something messed up and called the cops and said I heard a lot of yelling from the house. Could they go check? This kept my brother from attacking the dude, a coworker of hers. The cops show up, take statements, we leave, and the next day he pulls her iMessages off the email account and talks to a lawyer. We give the lawyer the messages, and when we show up 5 days later from our hunting trip, he calls her and says he caught something badass and wants her to come out and see it. When she comes out, he gives her the divorce papers and kicks her out of the house. She had police do a civil standby while she got her stuff a few days later. The house was his before they got married, so all she got to keep was some stuff they bought together and her car. No kids, and the prenup annulled the alimony that she could have gotten as he made way more money than her. The guy she was sleeping with had a record. We saw her a few months later. She tried talking to my wife and said that she missed my brother and she was so sorry. The guy and her broke up all of a couple of weeks after the divorce. It happened to a friend of mine. We were all on a vacation, about 7 friends, and everyone was drinking. We were the only 2 who didn't drink. He managed to snag his girlfriend's phone while she was passed out and pulled me to the side. He said, "She's cheating on me. Some guy named Joey texting her and meeting her after work for doing the deed every day. Just going on and on about how great their bedroom life is." We ended up searching for names and mutual friends via Facebook. Turns out Joey was a girl. While at uni, I walked in on an argument between my girlfriend and her housemate as the housemate shouted, "At least I'm not a working girl who sleeps with everyone when she goes home." Turns out my girlfriend was sleeping around. I'm a live-in nanny, and the parents are going through a particularly nasty divorce, mostly because she's bat-crap insane. But she decided that she didn't give an F anymore and started bringing this guy she's been doing the deed with back to the house, sometimes even while the dad is home. She says, "We're just friends," but I've caught them making out on several occasions. Which she says, of course, that he kissed her and she didn't want it or whatever bullcrap. Really, Amanda? Then why did I watch you go sit down on his lap and stick your tongue down his throat? She's also encouraged the kids, while the dad isn't home, to call this new guy Daddy. Thankfully, the dad has finally realized how frickin' nuts she is and is getting a divorce. As this is all pretty recent, we haven't found a new place yet. Thank God he's going for full custody and that the kids are still really young. And that I'm going with him and the kids and not her. It terrifies me what these kids are going to have to deal with in their lives because she's their mum. She's an incredibly selfish, narcissistic piece of crap excuse for a human being, and I hope that all of this karma comes back to bite her on the butt really frickin' hard. I caught my boyfriend of 2 years. He'd asked me to proofread his paper on his Mac, and the text messenger popped up on the right-hand side of the screen. He was sitting in his bed texting some girl, "Good night, I love you," while sitting right next to me in his bed. I deleted his entire paper, wrote, "Who's Marissa?" saved it and told him it looks great and left. She was his girlfriend of 8 years who'd lived next to his parents 2 hours away. This is a cold and totally baller move from you, author. What's he going to complain about? Oh, you're going to miss the deadline for your essay? Well, I've missed the last 2 years of my life, Derek, so get some frickin' perspective and deal with it. Oh my god, this sounds just like what happened to my friend. She was dating him for 2 years and he had a girlfriend near his parents' house for 10 years. Apparently he'd talked about marriage with both of them. Like how? What was your plan if you didn't get caught? My ex, many moons ago, was a frickin' idiot. She knew that I had many friends that lived in the same neighborhood as her ex that she had left a couple of months before dating me. She always told me that she was going over to a girlfriend's house to study, and I had no reason not to believe her, until one day she wouldn't answer a single text. Now, I'm not the kind of guy to text a billion times. I'll text you, then if you don't reply, maybe I'll text you 2 or 3 hours later to make sure you got my last message. And if you still don't answer, then I'll talk to you when you feel like you want to talk. So anyway, I'm at my friend's house later that night, having not gotten a reply from her since about 12 hours ago. Me and the group of friends decide to go outside in his backyard to make a fire pit when I notice her car in the driveway of the house behind us. I didn't know that was her ex's house, but it was the way wrong neighborhood for her girlfriend's house. I call her sister up and say, "Where's your sister?" And she says, "Oh, well, she's at the girl's name's house." Well, I'm going freaking nuts then because I'm looking at her car right now and this isn't the girl's name's neighborhood. Her response to that was, So I hung up and asked my friend who lives in the house we were all hanging out at, who owns the house behind him. "Oh, that's her ex's house." I called her phone to find out it was off. So I just chilled the rest of my time there and paid it no more attention. No sense in worrying at this point as it's a done deal. About 2 hours later, I get a call from her saying the phone was on silent for study purposes and if I wanted to come over. "Sure," I told her. I arrive at the house a little bit after and she hops in the car, and as soon as she shuts the door, I ask, "How was studying with your girlfriend's name?" And she gives me some bullcrap answers like I didn't know. After she's done spewing her lies, I say, "Weird, must have been a long walk from your ex's house." I made sure to look at her face as I said it so that I could see any expression. She knew that I knew but wouldn't let it go. It'll go quicker if I just give you the rundown of the dialogue that happened. "We were just talking things out." Why would it be okay to just go over there and do that if you have a boyfriend? Talk things out? What needs to be talked out? "We've been friends for a really long time before dating. I just can't stop talking to him." So to get around that, you feel it's logical to lie to me about going to your girlfriend's house. It's 11 p.m. You've been talking it out since 10 a.m. I've tried getting a hold of you a couple of times too. Silence for a bit then. So what did you guys do? She wouldn't answer or look at me. I told her to get out of the car and just pulled off. She had broken up with him the first time because he was a complete jerk to her and seemed to not really want to do anything with himself. About a year after I drove off, she called me asking if we could try and make it work again and if I'd like to get together over dinner. So I said yes and arranged a date at a fairly upscale place for Saturday at 8 p.m. I told her the dress code and all, since it was a snazzy joint. I'm not sure how long she sat there because I didn't frickin' go. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I signed into her Google account to check her emails. She'd forgotten her password, so I was resetting it. I checked her Google Maps history, and her most recent visits were at my best friend's house while I was away for work. Huzzah for Google Maps! I was on a break from my girlfriend at the time, got a text from a girl that I had mutual friends with and knew each other kind of well. Started having a dirty conversation, talking about sleeping together and stuff. Turns out my girlfriend at the time had gotten a burner phone with a different number and was the one sending me the text the whole time. She wasn't pleased. That awkward moment when you're both dating for 7 months and then you just both kind of find each other on Tinder close to your 8-month mark. It was pretty hilarious because we were both like, that sort of checks out. You want to see other people? So we both broke up but stayed friends and kept our friend group together even till today. In short, found each other on Tinder close to our 8-month mark and decided to just be friends. My wife. We started getting distant from each other and we'd planned a trip to see my grandparents who live a few states away. A month before the planned trip, she told me that she wanted to cancel it and go to a family reunion on her side of the family in a completely different state, and that she wanted to go alone and not bring our kids. I thought that was weird because why wouldn't you want to introduce your kids to the family they never see? Like I said, we were growing distant, so I just said, okay, fine, go. Maybe the time apart will be good for us. She came back and suddenly wanted to move across the country to go work at a hospital job that her distant aunt had offered me. Didn't even ask me if I was willing to go. I told her, you do whatever it is you need to be you, but you're not taking the kids. After a few days, she realized that she couldn't leave and not see the kids, so she begged me to forgive her. I did. And then over the next month we became more distant than we were before all this had happened. I took lunch at work and decided to go home for it, which I never do, and when I got home there was no one there, so I decided to go through her computer, which I also never do. Found pictures of her with some guy she'd met on Zynga Poker who lived, guess where? The state that her supposed family reunion was. I've never had a panic attack until that day. I had to call my neighbor and have him sit with me because I legit thought I was having a heart attack. Took pictures of everything I found, other pictures, emails, and Facebook messages. I waited until the kids were in bed, because I refused to fight and scream in front of them, and laid all of my pictures out there for her to see. Not a fun day. I advertised myself on Craigslist Casual Encounters, and her brother-in-law found me on there. It wasn't until some time later I questioned what he was doing there also. As someone whose girlfriend is spending a month in Europe, I should not have started reading these other replies. Oh, pal, hang in there, buddy. A month isn't that long, and most people aren't that crappy to their spouses, even when they have jobs where they spend a lot longer abroad. If you didn't feel worried until you read this, then that's probably a good level of trust. My ex-girlfriend cheated on me while I was in basic training. I was allowed to call on my birthday. Being madly in love, I used it to call my girlfriend, who was pregnant with our daughter. I remember the conversation as if it were yesterday. She says, "Hello? Hey babe, I miss you. How are you doing?" Okay, I have someone who wants to talk to you." Another voice comes on. "Hey man, don't worry about her. I'm taking good care of her." Okay. May I talk to her?" "Sure, here she is." What? This is bullcrap, and I slammed down the receiver for the payphone. Apparently, I echoed. I received a letter from her that day with her telling me that she had lost the baby, which later I found out to also be a lie, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. I got caught because I forgot I gave her an extra key. Not me, but my buddy. He's such a great guy and yet has been cheated on by every girl he's ever dated. First girl apparently gets so blackout drunk that she can't tell who is who because after going to the party one night, ended up telling my friend that they should have bathtub whoopee like they did the other night. Only he had never done the deed in a bathtub. The second girl dumps him because she was convinced he was cheating on her. After swearing up and down that he wasn't, he finally asked why she was so convinced. He's a great guy and would never even give the slightest reason for her to be suspicious. She told him that she had been cheating, so he had to have been as well. And the third girl that he's currently with is best friends with her most recent ex, as in still goes on best friend dates. She still lives with and is friends with her ex-boyfriend. It's apparent to everyone but him that he's being cheated on. He's really just so sweet and naive. I caught my ex thanks to Pokemon frickin' Go of all things. She mentioned Pokemon was using lots of her data. I explained that in her settings she could see how much data an app was using. I proceeded to show her and then proved to her it wasn't Pokemon Go by pointing out Tinder was using way more data. It was sad, but also funny the way that went down. I knew my wife was up to some shady stuff, went through her texts, which I sent to a lawyer. The one text that cut the deepest? Baby Cakes Marco asking if he could splooge on her engagement and wedding rings. Frick you, Amanda. My first girlfriend cheated on me. She left to go to a party, but I couldn't go, so I kissed her and said, "Have fun, be safe." She later called me and said she slept with 2 different guys and that it was fun, so she was dumping me. I'm still recovering from that one. My heart busted harder than those dudes on my ex's face. Back in the day, Snapchat used to tell you the top 3 friends of any of your friends. I saw that I was number 1, her best friend was number 3, and some dude coworker was number 2. I later logged into her Voxer account and was able to hear conversations between her and said dude, where she'd say things like she can't wait to run her hands through his hair, and then the pinnacle was when he asked her if his splooge tasted different after drinking Pineapple Monster energy drinks. She said she doesn't usually taste it and just swallows, and that she'll have to pay more attention next time. I confronted her, and she's telling me that I'm taking it out of context. Yeah, because that's a normal conversation between male and female coworkers. Oh my god, what a d-bag. Did that moron actually think Pineapple Monster had any real pineapple in it? I'm beginning to wonder if people are watching this and looking for advice on how to avoid getting caught cheating. My iPhone synced to her roommate's laptop, revealing a treasure trove of undressed pictures I had saved in my camera roll. Years later, iPhones now ask you if you want to trust a computer that you're charging from, rather than just syncing automatically. Came a bit too late for me. A buddy of mine was cheating on his then-wife with a cam girl. They were a very religious church-going couple in their 20s. The cam girl blackmailed him for $500 saying that otherwise she'd send it to his entire friends list. Wife, parents, grandma, pastor. He paid her off. When she asked for $500 more, he confessed. She still sent the videos. It was pretty crazy for a while. The wife was considering a divorce until she got pregnant. They worked things out and things are all good now. The guy really turned around and became a much better person. I got caught when I admitted it. Being a cheater is one thing, but it turns you into a liar too, and by the end of it you've completely lost your soul. I didn't want to do that, so I just admitted things. I came back into town a day early and went to surprise him at work. Found him doing the deed with another secretary. He was also a secretary. He didn't see me, so I took a quick photo and snuck back out. Went home, called my friends and family. They came over and helped me pack up all his crap and change the locks. Dumped his stuff at his mum's house. I sent him the picture of him and the chick and informed him that he and his belongings now reside with his mother again. The house was mine and all the documents were in my name. He received no mail to my place. He also lived paycheck to paycheck, so no idea what he spent his money on as I paid all the bills. He spent the next few weeks begging me to take him back and all that jazz, bothered my friends, showed up at my job caterwauling on the street in front of the house. He eventually got bored and stopped. No idea what happened to him after that, but I haven't seen or heard from him since. What's the grossest example of personal hygiene that you've ever seen or smelled? I used to work retail, and one day we had this woman come into the store who had not showered for months. She stunk the whole store up from just walking around. We had to ask her to leave due to hygiene. I'll never forget that stench. It was like low tide and a dead body had been sitting around for a month. When I worked at a lingerie store, one of my first nights when I was still being supervised, a couple came in. The man was scraggly and a bit dirty looking, and the woman looked very clean. But there was a smell, a fishy smell, and my boss and I both assumed it was coming from the man. So we let the woman try on a couple of sets. Oh my god, we were wrong. We were so wrong. We had to air out the dressing room and steam clean the lingerie. It was awful. I have a girlfriend who thought it was normal for guys to have dingleberries. Poor girl was going down on a guy with matted poop fur down there. Okay, this one out of all of them made me audibly gasp. What the frick? I had to Google dingleberries. Oh, what the frick? I'm sitting in my living room by myself yelling out loud at this one. I work in an ER in a low-income area. There was this one that I'll never forget. She was a mid-40s obese hoarder who had decided it wasn't worth the effort to get out of her recliner for 2 weeks straight. She had a fridge within reach, so she wasn't hungry, but was producing feces and urine the entire time without getting up to use the restroom or clean herself. You could smell her down the hall with the door closed, and her behind was literally rotting away with pressure sores down to her bones. Oh, but how can you stand that? Probably nerve damage, and she'd slowly desensitized herself to being in that situation by building up behavior. I believe in this case she had some severe depression as well, which definitely could have contributed. Once the pressure sores are through the full skin thickness, they're past the pain receptors. They stop hurting and further damage isn't noticed. Someone once came into my ER that had been laying in their own spew, most pungent but definitely other bodily fluids for several days, and the stomach acid had eroded her skin. She was pulling off chunks of her scalp, then playing with the skin and hair, all in a substances-induced state. Stay away from substances, kids. Well, I'm about 1/10 of the way through this script and I already want to burn it, all the stories, and the entire internet to the ground. Oh well, only the rest of the video to go. You're welcome, listeners. I worked at an engine assembly plant in New York State where everyone else is in these 3 to 5 station teams that rotate every hour, so you don't go crazy doing the same job for 8+ hours. We had this dude who came to our group who had the nastiest teeth I've ever seen in my life. His bottom front teeth were all fused together into one big lower tusk, and his breath could gag a maggot. It got so difficult to work with the guy, you could smell his breath from at least 6 feet away, that we had to go to a manager to figure out how to handle it and not be buttholes. Well, all they could do was tell him he needed to do something about it, so he constantly had a tub of mints on him. After that, his breath just smelled like a rotting corpse and mint. So, yay. As someone who's been through this earlier in my life, I beg you to go easy on people who have the rotting smell on their breath, because there's no hiding it. It's their teeth you smell rotting. I spent most of my teenage years homeless and without insurance until I was 25. My teeth started falling apart when I was 14. Apparently, my adult teeth came in with very weak enamel, and I was always told I would take lots of visits to keep them in good health. By the time I had insurance, it was so bad that the $2,000 a year plans that everyone has would not cover anything resembling a helpful solution. Even just getting dentures and pulling the teeth was going to be $12,000 or up. I was embarrassed all the time. I spoke to no one unless I was 10+ feet away, never looked anyone in the eye, and never smiled even when I had a reason to. In the end, all my teeth needed replacing, but specifically, all of my molars had rotted down to below the gum line, and I learned to chew soft food with my tongue. So I get it, bad breath is bad, but try to see it from their point of view. Rotting teeth suck, and unless you have a plan without a yearly limit, which barely exists these days, it's hard to do anything about it. Mine was out of my control. I brushed and flossed daily, as I was supposed to, and they still fell apart. My first tooth crumbled while I was eating mac and cheese, which is not strong enough to break a tooth. I lived in a triple dorm when I was a sophomore in college, 2 friends and myself. When my friend transferred to a different school over Christmas break, the college automatically added in a third person as our dorm had the only opening on campus. The girl was a year younger than us, not a huge deal, but the problem developed a few days after she moved in with us. There was a slight odor when she walked by. The odor grew day by day. We began to realize that she wasn't showering. We had an ensuite bathroom and we would hear the water turned on in the shower for about 5 minutes, but she never came out with wet hair or looking any different than when she went in. We went for a soft approach at first. We went to Bath & Body Works and got her a really nice basket of scented soaps and shampoos and conditioners, because she only had one very odd generic shampoo that she had had in the shower. She was very grateful and we thought that would be the end of it. She put the shower items in the shower and literally nothing else changed. The levels on the soaps and shampoo didn't go down. The smell was getting worse. We sat down with her and had a serious but concerned conversation. We said we were worried about her and wanted to know if she was okay and how we could help. She said everything was fine and nobody else had ever mentioned her smelling bad. I find that completely impossible as she was surrounded by a stench of body odor coming from every pore. She said she'd shower more. She began going to parties, which we thought would make her clean up a bit, but it didn't. She would just add cheap alcohol to the body odor scent. After about a month, my roommate and I went to the dorm advisor and explained what the situation was and how we were done. She was smelling worse every day and was beginning to be very snotty to us. The residence director met with her, and although he couldn't tell us what happened during the meeting, he verified that he could smell the odor coming off her. Thankfully, she had made a friend, a very odd duck, but a duck I'm still thankful for, and that friend's roommate moved out. She moved within a week. We ran into her on campus every now and then. Same stink. I had a friend with very low self-esteem, could never find a girlfriend, self-pity kind of guy. He had the worst grime and film on his teeth. I told him he won't find a girlfriend unless he cleans his teeth because it's repulsive to anyone with any respect for themselves, in less words. He denied it, saying someone will like him for him, blah blah blah. Well, one day his grandma paid for him to see a dentist who made them pearly whites once again. Not 2 weeks later, he had himself a girlfriend. Still thinks it was never the problem. Woman was a heavy smoker, which can cause a lot of issues in itself, and bad BO like she never showered, and the list goes on and on. But the worst thing was this nasty brown blouse that she wore all the time, and I mean like 4 days a week at least. But she did wear other things occasionally because they always jumped out. Thing is, there was a picture on her desk wearing that blouse from like 5 or 6, whatever years before, and it was white in the picture. I just thought it was coincidence, and no way it was the same one, till one of her co-workers who shared the office with her started complaining about her one day when she was gone, and the woman confirmed it was the same shirt and she had slowly watched it change from white to whatever disgusting color it currently was over the years. My granddad did quit eventually, but my nan smoked until she died. Anyway, I'm there with my mom and aunt cleaning the house, and they always had this yellow/green wallpaper. Start taking family pictures off the walls and suddenly this lovely baby blue wallpaper is staring right at us. A guy we call the Stink Beast. I was a rent-to-own delivery guy right out of college. We had a regular customer that smelled like a sock stuffed with boiled cabbage and soaked in diarrhea, all the time. He also only wore tank tops. I went to his nasty house to pick up a stereo he couldn't pay for. I spent 20 minutes in his house unhooking wires, etc. There was dog crap on the couch next to me in more than one spot. And I mean actual turds, not a smear or something. I rolled the stereo out on a dolly through several more piles of crap and loaded the stereo into the van. As I'm ready to close the door, he runs out with a wad of cash and wants me to put it back. While I'm writing up a new ticket, he leans in to adjust something on the stereo. His sweaty, hairy pit jams right into my face. It was like getting hit in the face with a used diaper. I immediately whirl around and spew in his yard. While I'm trying to be nice and pretending to get the flu, his dog proceeds to come over and eat said spew. So yeah, this guy. Bonus to the story, 2 years or so after this happened, I saw the stink beast at an old country buffet. I told my wife that he was there, and her reply was that he must be the guy in the blue tank top. She said she could smell him from the opposite side of the steam table. Said people were sniffing the steamer like something had spoiled. I had a part-time job at uni cleaning out student rooms after the occupants had moved out. One room was left with no fewer than 28 bottles of urine that the occupant had decided to just leave in the room. The shared bathroom was next door. Yep, as someone who lived in student accommodation, I'm just surprised it took this long for the first example from that kind of dorm to show up. And an abundance of pee bottle stories follows. My buddy supervises commercial building construction. He constantly has to reprimand and discourage the workers from peeing in bottles, then sealing them in the walls, all because they're too lazy to walk to the porta potty and too lazy to throw the bottles away. I'm currently imagining future archaeologists quizzing each other over the meaning of why our civilization sealed urine into walls. I peed in a lemonade container in middle school so I could get some weird middle school clout, but without a plan, I panicked and stuffed it in my locker. I was so paranoid about taking it out and getting caught that I just left it in there, and since it was a little buried under unused binders, I pretty much forgot about it until cleaning my locker for the end of the year. Middle school was too strange of a time for me. This guy and his family didn't like to shower, and they all had food stains all over their clothing, but the father smelled like he pooped himself, smelled like pee, and that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was he had food stuck in his hair and maggots crawling in it. Literally, the guy smelled like death. He said I was being offensive because I stood 10 feet away from him. Guy had the nerve to call my manager over, who then immediately stuck his hand up and said he wasn't interested in hearing his story, that he needed to leave and not come back until he took a shower. After this is when he started taking care of himself. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I met a girl on a dating app and we got along well online, but she smelled like crap in person. I'm talking fully clothed and several feet away, there was still this stench of poop. I was really embarrassed for her, to be honest. She complained about guys ghosting her and not knowing why. I mean, it's not easy to tell someone they smell like butt. I don't know how you couldn't be aware of it either. Nose blindness is a thing. You stop smelling the things you're used to. I remember a story about how Febreze, which eliminated odors, was having trouble getting going. Some people from the company were interviewing regular people about their habits, and they came across an old cat lady whose house absolutely reeked. When they subtly and politely asked about cat smell, the lady replied that it was amazing that with so many cats around, they didn't smell at all, and that's why she didn't need to use Febreze. This is also why smokers think other people can't tell they're smokers. We can, and why some women who have a favorite perfume end up drenching themselves in it over time as they stop being able to smell the regular dose. I worked on a dairy farm growing up in Wisconsin. If you don't already know, dairy farms smell terrible. I would always smell the farm at first when I showed up to work, and after a while you no longer smell it. The kids in high school made fun of how I smelled, even though I wore clean clothes and took showers every night when I came home from work. Fast forward to me coming home for the first time in a year after joining the army, I'm going through some old clothes and wow, the stench on those things, even though they were washed, was quite strong. I threw them out. So yeah, nose blindness is definitely a thing. So I used to work at this really upscale vegan hot pot restaurant a few years ago. The owner-operator was very adamant on how it's okay not to wash your hands because in my country, washing hands meant you're cleaning off the hard work you've done. She was the only one who wouldn't, even after using the bathroom. We knew she wouldn't wash her hands. She'd use gloves, yes, since she handled food sometimes, but even then, still wash your fricking hands. Also, my ex told me he didn't think it was necessary to wash his pee-pee because my wang just washes itself when the shampoo runs down my body in the shower. People say that about their feet too. Wash your damn feet. You do not want nasty feet. Especially if you're diabetic. You get nasty feet, you get ulcers, you get an infection, now you have no feet to wash. I'm a nurse, so I've seen some crap, but the worst would be a woman with scabies and fleas. I don't know how she got them, but she was so ashamed of having them that she basically just barricaded herself at home for some weeks until her daughter got her admitted to the hospital. I'm not exaggerating when I say that everything on her jumped when you came close to her bed or she moved. She had them everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I spare you the description of her intimate area. Ugh, my aunt is a nurse and she had some stories. One that stuck out was a large obese woman who came in and they had to bathe her. My aunt said she lifted up her bosom only to be greeted by live maggots. Oh, I'm going away now. Goodbye. I dated a hippie. Now, he showered every day, but he never used soap or shampoo because of chemicals. We did the deed a couple of times, and yeah, he was a bit whiffy, but nothing too grotesque. I'm into perfumery, so also have a thing for the smells of humans. I was cool with it. One day, he wanted me to rim him. My mind immediately went to the fact that he never used soap, so his butthole was probably in, well, pretty crappy shape. I sensually suggested we take our adult fun times to the shower. I seductively got in the shower and made a big deal of soaping him up from top to bottom, finishing on his butthole. The water ran brown. It ran brown from years of built-up crap. I watched as the densely, poopy, soapy water went down the drain and realized I could do better in life. Or at least stop dating hippies. I work in medical, so I've seen a lot, but one of my good friends who is a high-level marketing person at a university and has a master's degree asked me how often I clean my house. I found out she showers once every 10 days, has numerous skin infections, wipes off kitchen counters maybe once a month once things get moldy, etc. But the worst part was when she told me she never changes or washes her sheets. She had them on her bed for 2 years and never took them off until she threw them away because she bought new ones. And I feel bad when I don't change my sheets after 1 week. After a night at the bar, I went home with this cute guy who outwardly seemed pretty normal and attractive. Got to his place and it was filled with garbage, like a layer of garbage spread on the floor. I had a few drinks in me, so it was like, okay, he's cute, this is gross, but let's see how it goes. Takes me to his bedroom and there's literally disgusting old food and garbage in the bed and in the sheets. Like not just containers, expired, disgusting, open food directly on the bed, and lots of it. It was so revolting, I started thinking of excuses to leave. This guy was cute though, so I stuck around another 5 to 10 minutes thinking how we can work this out. We sat on the bed and literally under the sheets were filled with garbage too. He proceeds to take off his socks for whatever reason and his toenails are completely black, with long nails, and his feet are so dirty like they hadn't been washed ever. I gagged a little before bolting out of there saying I didn't feel well, which I didn't. Honestly, I was young and willing to put up with a lot, but that was a no-go. Oh my god, a lot of my girl pals have told me a lesser version of this same story, and I'd say, went home with a cute guy only to find out he's a filth wizard man-child is pretty common, but not to this extent. Unrelated, this script has been very challenging to record without gagging. If you've listened this far, I salute you. Please let me know if you've made it up to here. I have one and only one instance of insane hygiene. When I was in college, they got some dorm assignments screwed up. I played baseball and thus I was in the athletic dorm. For some reason, rather than assigning another ball player to my room, they assigned some random guy. This initially was no problem for me. I was not a stereotypical jock, and I had many friends who weren't athletes. The first day was okay. Turned out he worked at Domino's Pizza and would bring home 4 or 5 pizzas after work. So he shows up with some pizza and says I can have all I want. I'm thinking this might be cool, free pizza every day. Alas, things quickly took a turn. The first and second nights I noticed just a hint of that dirty feet smell. Dude didn't take his shoes off either night, so I was like, where is this coming from? But really, it wasn't that noticeable, just the occasional whiff as I said. The third night, oh my god, I walk in from baseball practice late, and he was already there playing his Xbox. He had the latest versions of PlayStation and Xbox and tons of games. I mention this so that it's clear that poverty is not to blame for the situation. Anyway, I walked into the room and I smelled a smell that I have never smelled before or since. A smell beyond description. He had simply taken off his shoes and his socks were black. They were supposed to be white. God knows the last time he had changed them, I stepped back outside to keep from gagging. For the next month, until they straightened out the dorm situation, I was only in my room for sleep. Nothing else. The only way I could sleep was to spray my pillow with cologne or something and bury my face in it. The smell hung in the air after that, even when he wasn't there. When my friends would come by to get me to go out, they would walk in and immediately turn and leave and give me a what the frick look. During my month living with my new friend, who to my knowledge never actually attended a class, I never saw him shower. I saw him in 2 sets of clothing during that month, his pizza uniform and a t-shirt and gym shorts ensemble completed by his spoiled socks. After he was relocated, I never saw him again, and I pray that whoever was his new roommate was born without a sense of smell. We had two regulars that used to come into our bar. They were in their later years of life but enjoyed the atmosphere and loved chatting up anyone who would listen. Things started going south a few years back when we started getting some complaints that they would sometimes smell like urine. Then it dawned on me. I hadn't seen either of them get up and go to a washroom. Eventually, we came to find out that instead of acting like normal members of society, they would come in, drink a beer for a few hours, and just casually pee themselves while wearing diapers and not think anyone would notice. They could have been incontinent from years of holding it in while they sat and drank. My mom's ex had a buddy who ended up like that because he felt like taking a pee killed his buzz. Started wearing adult diapers at like 42 or 43, he said. The only reason I know this is because we were on a road trip and he made a point of stopping to let me take a leak and explaining why I shouldn't hold it in for any reason. I went to a friend's house and she picked up poop from her cat's litter box with her hand and then proceeded to not wash her hands. Wait, stop! What the frick? This might be the most casually messed up one here, in my opinion. My wife was a labor and delivery nurse, and she told me one time a woman was having a baby and the doctor asked the woman if she wanted that mole looked at, then poked at it with a set of hemostats. The mole moved and it was actually a cluster of crabs that the woman had on her downstairs parts. My wife was horrified, so she told me. Ugh. I had a landlord who reeked of garlic. You could smell him from a mile away. It would take the whole day to get the smell out of the apartment after he left. He was from Transylvania, so I always joked that he fled the vampires and applied garlic every day just to be safe. My grandma gave me a garlic pill to fend off the mosquitoes. It fended off everyone else too. What products do cashiers silently judge people for buying? Had a teenage girl come in with several members of her family. They all came up to the counter practically in tears and bought a pregnancy test. She then went into our bathroom to take the test, which I thought was odd, seemed like the kind of thing you'd do in the sanctity of your own home. Then the girl comes out bawling, and then her family starts bawling, and they're making a huge scene in the middle of my store. It was super duper awkward. When guys buy feminine hygiene products and have to explain that it's for his girlfriend. Dude, nobody thinks you were buying tampons for yourself. Yep, I wouldn't do it when I was younger, but when I hit my mid-20s, I realized how freaking dumb I was being. Need some enemas and tampons and nail polish? I'll pick that crap up from the store for you. Just expect me to get the wrong brands, or the right brand with the wrong product. But I'll try to get it right. Once you realize you'll probably never talk to or meet 99% of the people you ever see again, it makes doing stuff like this a lot easier. I work in a bookstore. I've had people red with shame while they bought 50 Shades of Grey and make comments about how I must think they're idiots. Look, I don't give a crap about what you buy. At least you're reading and keeping my store open. Do you also get the weakly old men who proudly slap down their adult magazine on the counter? I used to work for Borders, and those were always the nicest old men. No creepers. Every time I buy lube, I always get this feeling that the cashier thinks I'm buying it for butt stuff. Same feeling whenever I buy double-ended, penetrative adult toys. One of our customers buys anywhere from 25 to 32 bottles of laxatives a week. Every week, and not the oral kind either. Maybe he cares for a giant family of surprisingly healthy smack addicts. Despite the fact that it contains mention of a crippling substance addiction, the last suggestion was strangely wholesome, don't you think? I don't judge, but I get some good stories. I saw a guy in the contraception aisle looking absolutely baffled at the wide variety of jimmies. I'm a pharmacist and went to help. With an inward sigh, some people have no idea how to use them. He said, "I have no idea what I'm looking at. There are so many. I've been fixed for almost 20 years. But my boy's going to college and I don't want him bringing STDs or any babies home with him." He got really excited when I told him about spermicide and bought 5 to 6 dozen-count boxes. That's a good dad. Okay, quick story. I have an ultra-conservative Asian mom who never even mentioned doing the deed, ever. When I got out of boot camp to my first duty station, everyone was getting care packages from home, cookies, civilian clothes, etc. I got one from my mom. It was about 100 jimmies. Assorted boxes with a note saying, "Please be safe and we will never talk about this package again. Love, Mom." Bracelets that harness the healing energy of magnets. Yeah, well, joke's on you. Blood has iron and is magnetic, and I have the power of science and the Lord. Freshman year of high school, I was a cashier at a local grocery store. There was an upscale organic cupcake boutique in town that sold their cupcakes for about $4 each. It was ridiculous, but people still bought them. Anyway, the owner would come in every other week and buy about 20 boxes of Betty Crocker cupcake mix and frosting. She must have had like a 2,000% rate of return on those things. The cupcake boutique has since gone out of business, and the lady was an annoying soccer mum in her mid-30s, so who cares? I cashiered at Home Depot. Had a dude in his mid-20s pull up to my register with rope, duct tape, cleaning gloves, tarp, bleach, Febreze, cookies, bucket, and sponges. I rung him up. I didn't even know what he'd purchased until he came back in and just said, "Dude, I could be planning a murder and you didn't even care. What the frick? I just lost $20. Then he went to return everything except the cookies. True story. And yes, Home Depot sells cookies. They're like right next to all the chips and sodas. They're those 98-cent grandma cookies that come in packs of 2. Them things are just straight fire. Real murderers use self-checkout. Sir, I make minimum wage. They do not pay me enough to care about what you're doing with that rope and tarp. I got judged by a cashier once. I was working in a welding and fabrication facility at the time as a repair guy. Since I wasn't one of the welders, I would often get tasked with whatever needed doing. The particular job at the time required ultrasonic testing of bends made in some tubing to ensure proper wall thickness. We had one tube of ultrasound gel. Sure enough, the tube got knocked off the table and run over by a forklift. The job was very time critical and we needed to do the ultrasounds now. A good substitute for ultrasonic gel is KY. I grabbed a fistful of petty cash and rushed over to a nearby grocery store and grabbed every tube of KY they had. I then ran up to the cashier, who then rung up tube after tube after tube. I was in such a rush that I really hadn't thought about the normal use of KY. As she was looking at me oddly and silently ringing up my purchase, I said something like, "It has been crazy at work today." The look on her face was priceless. Halfway out of the parking lot, I realized what had happened. We all had a good laugh about it at work, and I had the nickname KY for a few days. When parents with very overweight kids buy nothing but junk food. Do you judge people who are high and buy junk food? I worry sometimes. Also, can you tell I'm high when I do it? Usually, after you leave, my coworkers and I will comment about how stoned the last guy was. We'll laugh briefly and get on with our lives. We don't judge you, we mostly envy you. People being on Mary J were the easiest customers I had to deal with on the night shift. Drunks were the worst. I think we banned the wrong recreational substance. This isn't exactly the same thing, but I used to work at AutoZone. One day a customer came in and asked if there were any deals on our strongest antifreeze. I asked him if he meant the lowest temperature rating and he said no, the one with the most ethylene glycol. I was really confused and asked him what he needed it for, and he told me it was because his neighbor's kid just got kittens and they were trespassing on his property. I excused myself and went back to my boss, the store manager, and told him, and he told me I had to make the sale. I had to sell him 4 gallons of antifreeze to kill some defenseless kittens and absolutely crush his neighbor's kids. I never tried to say I hate anybody and I never wish anybody harm, but yeah, him. Not a cashier, but I worked in fulfillment for Amazon for 4 years. I can't tell you how many times I've checked out the name on the label for a shipment of questionable combinations. Memorable shipments include lube and an adult toy, plus a baby Einstein video, 16 bottles of laxatives and adult diapers. Anytime someone orders Thai Rent Girls 101, what you must know about doing the deed and paying for it before coming to Thailand. In conclusion, don't ever think that buying something online means that you escape the judgment of others. I've often thought about that. I shop for several family members via my Prime account. I like getting add-on items when I can do, and do not like having items coming in all week at random, so I try to group my purchases. I've ordered combinations such as cinnamon sticks, multi-pack jimmies, mouthwash, birthday candles, tarps, and hemorrhoid ointment. Now I know someone is looking at these orders and thinking, what the frick? I mean, at least you're escaping the withering face-to-face judgment. Surely that counts for something. A Vietnamese lady came in a day after Valentine's Day to buy candy. She bought hundreds of bags. I made a joke about how the dentist bill must be insane, and she told me how she sends the candy to orphan homes in Vietnam because they don't have candy there, apparently. Ugh, don't judge a book by its cover, guys. Picture it. October 31st, 1974. My mum sends 11-year-old me to the store for a bag of apples, and my dad needs Gillette razor blades. The cashier looks at me like I just took a dump on her conveyor belt. Not a cashier, but I do have a story. I got rectal cancer at age 28. I had my rectum removed. During recovery, I became completely incontinent, so I had to start wearing Depends, a kind of diaper. Just for clarity, I'm a tall, skinny, relatively well-dressed young woman. The teenage boy checking me out at Walmart let out a quiet, "damn," when he bagged them. Dude, I just assume your grandma sent you to the store. I've bought them a few times and it was always for my grandma and I've never thought twice about it. The only time I really judged someone was when he came in and found a perfume he liked and bought 2. I said it would probably be a good idea if you have 2 women in your life, thinking wife, mother, daughter, etc., to get them something different. He said, "Oh no, one's my wife, the other's for my girlfriend. If they wear the same perfume, I don't have to worry about my wife smelling my girlfriend's perfume on me." I mean, that's smart, but it's also so crappy. Once went into a Victoria's Secret to buy a Valentine's gift for my girlfriend. The cashier asked me, "Would you like to join the Bra of the Month Club?" I asked her what that was and she said, not knowing if I was married or not, "You get 1 bra shipped to you every month which you can give to your wife or girlfriend?" I said, "Can I get 1 for each of them?" And she looked at me kind of horrified until I started laughing. The only people I silently judge are the ones trying to make up a reason for me to not silently judge them. So what if you eat that whole cake by yourself? Live a little! A cashier once talked crap to my grandma when she bought pig's feet. I think they're gross too, but I don't want you talking crap to my grandma about how gross they are. Mind your business. When my friend would buy Depends, you could tell the cashier and everyone in line would judge him hard. He was a 23-year-old college kid who still peed the bed when he drank. He tried his best, man. No, he didn't wear them to parties, he tried to remember to put them on when he drunkenly got home. This led to him putting them on backwards multiple times. This effectively kept the pee out of his diaper and in his bed. Once he forgot to put them on and brought a girl home. Let's just say he convinced her that he drunkenly showered in the middle of the night. Her ride home must have been mortified. He's not my friend anymore, by the way. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm a clerk at a convenience store, not something I judge harshly for, but something I've noticed and I think is funny: teenagers buying protection. Most adults buying contraception just come in, grab the jimmies, pay for them, and leave. Most people are doing the deed, and adults realize that no one cares. Teenagers buying jimmies are super awkward about it though. Typical scenario: a couple comes in and they look like they're about 15 or 16. The girl hangs out by the front door, looking around awkwardly or just staring at her phone. The boy will walk up and down the candy aisle, candy on one side, health and beauty stuff on the opposite side, pretending to look at the candy, but keeping looking at the condoms to try and see what the selection is without looking like he's looking at jimmies. Bonus awkwardness if he texts his girlfriend to ask her opinion while she's standing right in front of me waiting. He'll then grab the absolute cheapest piece of candy he can find, and a box of Trojan fire and ice, every time. The way the kid wants it to look is, "I dragged my girlfriend down because I absolutely needed a single lemon head right this second, but I suppose I'll grab jimmies while I'm here." Then, after one of them pays, they'll quickly walk away with their heads huddled together, acting like they just got away with something. I always want to tell them that they don't have to treat it like something shady or sordid, and that no one gives a crap, but I'm happy they're using protection, and I worry that even mentioning it would embarrass them so much that they wouldn't come in next time. Every time this question comes up, I wonder, what makes you think I think anything about you? I think about my feet hurting, my back aching, and how long until my shift ends. You? Not so much. I'm a cashier, and this is it. The only time I think about the customers is when they're doing something actually annoying. So if you're not licking your fingers before touching the bills, being super critical about how I do things, telling me the same dumb joke I've already heard 5 times this shift, or anything generally annoying, I don't care what you buy. Or sneezing into your wad of cash, or pulling it from a sweaty crack of your body, or giving me all the soda-soaked change from your cup holders. The only time I can remember having a thought about a customer was when they brought our camouflage print lingerie with pink edging. I honestly couldn't care less if they wanted to buy it, even though I thought it was hideous, but while folding it, I couldn't get over how itchy that fabric was. I was curious about why someone would subject themselves to that. My shopping habits were judged by a cashier when I was 14. My music teacher sent me to the store for unlubricated jimmies. They're a way of keeping actors' sweat from damaging body microphones. It was a small town and the cashier knew me. She was horrified about what I was buying, and before I could explain, she insisted on calling my mother to let her know I was doing the deed. I then got to explain in a very loud voice that I was a virgin and they were for microphones. Even if I had been buying them for other stuff, I would think the smarter move on her part would be to sell them to me. If teenagers decided to do the deed, then they're going to do it regardless of how adults feel. Public shaming and denying them protection is not going to stop the deed, but can lead to other consequences. This is the correct attitude to the sheer inevitability of teens doing the deed, regardless of what the adults in their lives think about it. If they're gonna do it anyway, just make sure they're being safe. I used to work at a local pharmacy and a regular customer came in. The only items he purchased were a wrist brace and a tube of KY jelly. He must have noticed me looking at the items and he said, "I swear these are unrelated. Whatever helps you sleep at night, dude." When parents get angry at their kids for wanting a 50-pack of stickers or some cheap child's magazine, saying, "We don't have enough money for that," while paying for cigarettes and lottery tickets. Sometimes I just lie to my kids about not having money because we have so much of this random crap at home that I think I'm going to scream every time I open a drawer in the kitchen. As a parent of 6-year-old twins, I could not agree with you more. It's like every gosh darn step I take, I'm stepping on a coloring book or a random pack of some kind of bullcrap that I just said, "Fine, you can get it if you just shut the heck up about it." I used to work at Save-A-Lot as a cashier. Our client base tended to be a little lower on the economic ladder. At the first of the month, when the benefits get loaded to their cards, I always hated to see people push up a cart full of soda, chips, etc. These people also usually tended to be in poor health. I didn't really judge them, I more felt sad for them. I also didn't like seeing people who would come in with the PIN number for their card on a piece of paper. It was a small town, I know that wasn't your card. I didn't hold it against the people who had the misappropriated card, but more against the people who sold their $300 worth of food stamps for $150 so they could buy alcohol, cigs, substances, etc. The sad part was, a lot of the people selling had kids. I learned the other day that you can apparently get judged for buying alcohol at 7 a.m. The cashier was pretty vocal about it, and if I wasn't so non-confrontational, I would have told a manager. She flat out said something along the lines of, "It's a little too early for boozing up, don't you think?" 1. None of your business if I'm drinking early in the morning. 2. It was on sale during my routine trip to get milk and such. Am I supposed to just leave it and come back after 5 p.m. to buy my alcohol? However, when I got home, I realized how my entire purchase looked. I got milk, chocolate milk, Lunchables, also on sale, and a strawberry daiquiri. She probably thought I had kids or something, so I understand her concern. Kind of. She didn't have to say anything though, it really struck a nerve. That is so dumb. Just because you're buying alcohol at 7 in the morning doesn't mean you're going to go home and drink it immediately. Do you buy a week's worth of groceries and go home to eat it all right away? No! When contractors or painters would buy America's Finest or Speedwall paint, I assume they're overcharging a family or company by getting the cheapest paint possible. I'm not a painter, I'm a roofer, but hear me out. If I was to do every roof with top-of-the-line materials at every stage, I would be bankrupting families left and right. The construction game has changed a lot even in the short decade I've been playing, and the market is flooded with all sorts of products that may or may not be worth it. Navigating that minefield is supposed to be my job. I try to take homeowners by the hand, break the news to them that they can't afford Mike Holmes, and present their tiered options. But sometimes they're convinced they know more than you. They're a retired contractor who has never seen the new products, or they watch a lot of DIY Network, or they helped somebody build a deck. They're convinced that you're trying to sell them on bullcrap to pad your bottom line, and they will insist on the cheapest option, then cut things out of it. Underlayment? Don't need it. New flashing? Too expensive. Rotten eaves? We've got some wood lying around. Fiberglass shingles? What are you, a commie? Not because they can't afford better, but because they think you're trying to cheat them. And so I wind up at the lumberyard because I can't force them to do it my way, putting in bullcrap orders because that's all they're going to pay for. We sell Batman underwear that comes with an underwear cape at my work. I always have a little bit of judgment when those come through my line. Also, when old people buy leggings. Oh my god, my parents bought me these undies for Christmas. I'm 26. Actually, they are the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles version. But what do you do with the cape? You can't wear these under anything because the cape bunches. Am I supposed to wear these over my pants? I feel bad removing the cape portion, so I've left it on so far. Not a cashier, but I shop at Whole Foods. Invariably, there will be someone in front of me. She will have some $30 snake oil supplement and an overloaded container of prepared food, the kind where you pay by the pound. She will pull out cash as she's rung up and realize that she doesn't have enough to cover both, so she takes out the snake oil and leaves the food, which cannot be resold. I assume not only is she a moron for buying that crappy supplement, but is hoping the cashier will let her keep the food once it's been voided, since it's going into the trash. As a former Whole Foods employee, these people are infuriating. Wife was buying stuff for camping: hatchet, rope, some duct tape for the hole in the tent, small shovel and matches. The cashier was looking at her and she bursts out, "Husband teed me off for the last time." The cashier's eyes bugged out and he just let her go. Wife and daughter come out and are laughing and crying. On Mother's Day, a young guy, probably too young to have kids of his own, checked out with a Mother's Day card and a box of Jimmies. I said, "You must really love your mom." And he said, "Oh God, I didn't even realize." I work at a golf course and a medium bucket costs $7 for 40 balls, while a jumbo is $13 for 100 balls. When people come in and get two mediums for $14, it instantly makes me think they're idiots. In case you're dumb too, two mediums is $1 more for 20 less balls. "Huh? I work in a small hardware store, and if someone comes in to buy a plunger, and sometimes it's these young women, I wonder if they're the ones who just took a big enough crap to clog up their toilet and have to come in to get a plunger." I've had to buy a few pregnancy tests in my time, and I always switch the diamond ring my boyfriend bought me to my left hand so I don't get a look of pity. Just so you think I'm not crazy, I have a really irregular period. Sometimes it'll skip a month, sometimes I'll get 2 in 1 month, but the point is I'm on no schedule, so I have to take pregnancy tests a lot because I'm not sure if it's my weird period or pregnancy. I work at a gaming store. Anytime someone buys plastic sleeves with artwork for their cards, I judge them hardcore. They're a great seller, but I hate them. In college, I worked at a pharmacy at the camera counter. I didn't do most of the cashiering, but did occasionally. Here is a combination of items purchased by one customer that caused me to raise an eyebrow. Chocolate syrup, Astroglide, children's toy handcuffs. I don't really care what you're buying, but if you buy a huge box of Jimmies and a big bottle of lube and change your mind at the last second that you don't want it, F you. Now I have to walk around the store doing returns with those things in my hands. Hikers and park rangers, what's the scariest thing you run into in the woods? A few years ago, my brother and I were camping in Colorado. He heard a twig snap somewhere nearby and he wakes me up. We scan with our headlamps and see a huge pair of eyes staring at us through some willows. I figured it must be a bear. It kept staring at us for about 5 minutes until we turned off the lights. We were going to move camp back towards some other groups. All of a sudden, a massive moose comes charging out of the willows. Luckily, it veered off before it collided with our tent. Another time, I was hiking a trail I hike regularly with my dog, but it was totally deserted because of some rain. She was ahead of me, maybe 20 yards, when she comes to a dead stop and beelines it back down the trail, completely ignoring my calls. As I chase her, I notice an unmistakable mountain lion print. I was hiking the Adirondacks with my ex on a trail that was a loop around a lake with one trailhead exit. Early spring, so a lot of trail cleanup hadn't begun yet. We're walking about halfway to check out this waterfall, and I hear this rumbling sound that sounds like an animal stomping the ground towards us. I then hear this bizarre, rapidly increasing growl that sounds like what Hollywood uses for alien noises and fricking book it. My boyfriend tells me to hold up, but I'm crapping myself. I'm out of breath and refuse to go back the way we entered the trail. We have to march through this thick bog that was pulling our boots off to get through the other side to exit the loop. We get to the car and I'm crying at this point. The previous day was spent vomiting and eating bad food. Next vacation, we're going to a city, I moped. We had been in the Adirondacks for the past 4 vacations, and honestly, this experience beat me down. Years later, I was listening to nature sounds on the internet, and I hear that growl. A chill went up my spine. I learned that's a real thing. It was a mating call of a ruffed grouse bearing its wings on its chest. Yep, I freaked out because of a randy bird. I was in archaeological field school, living in a tent for 6 weeks at 7,500 feet, and the closest paved road was 10 miles away. One night, I woke up to a huffing, snorting kind of sound right outside my tent. Next thing I know, whatever it was bumping my head. I froze for a second, then on pure instinct, I did an overhead punch. Definitely felt contact. Whatever it was, it went away. This was on the U.S. Forest Service grazing land, so it could have been a cow with insomnia, but it could have also been a mountain lion or black bear. Wasn't even tempted to go out and see what it was. I preferred the safety of my tent. I was hiking in a national forest with my wife and dog. The first couple of miles of trail led to a waterfall and swimming hole, so it was fairly well populated with people. We decided to hike past the waterfall, which involved a bit of a climb, enough at least to keep most people from going past the waterfall. We hiked another mile or two without seeing a single person. This whole time, my dog was having a great time, happy to be in the woods and happy to walk 30 miles if we let her. Suddenly, in a particularly dense part of the trail, she stopped suddenly and stared straight ahead. She absolutely would not move another inch forward. We stopped and listened but couldn't hear or see anything unusual. The dog, though, started whining and trying to pull us on the leash back up the trail toward the swimming hole. I had never before or seen since my dog act this way, but I believe she was legitimately afraid of whatever was ahead of us. Maybe there was a bear on the trail, or a coyote, or maybe a serial killer was hiding in the woods. I'll never know because we listened to our dog and decided to get the frick out of there as fast as we could. Who knows, maybe we avoided some gruesome death deep in the woods. I'm beginning to think that a good proportion of these will either be bear-related or people being scared by the possibility of bears. Place your bets below for what percentage rate of the stories will contain Winnie the Pooh's distant cousins. Desert Park Ranger here. Volunteers at one of my parks called us to report a still smoldering, smoking car in one of our remote campsites. It was normal for stolen cars to get abandoned and burned. We went to look and gawked a few minutes while waiting for the fire department. After a couple of minutes standing there, it became very apparent there was a body in the front seat. After an additional look around, food wrappers, rope, numerous other strange items were found. It seems like whoever was in the front seat had been bound and shot. Police came and cleaned it up, didn't find any answers. We refer to that as the haunted site now. It's the most popular in that tiny park. One of our cubicle farm chiefs got a call from a guy threatening to take his own life. He said he'd had a lot of weapons and was going to end it, then gave the location close to our park. 2 of my co-workers got sent out to investigate. By the time they got there, another rangering entity had found the scene first. They told my co-workers to leave before there was a ton of complicated paperwork that they'd have to do. The guy had shot himself semi-successfully and then tried to walk for help. Large cleanup scene, felt bad for the responding park ranger. She wasn't with us, but had just dealt with her husband, another ranger, taking his own life the month before. She also found his body. But by far the scariest thing I ran into, I just moved out there and was taking care of 2 parks by myself, both closed. These parks are about 30 miles from the nearest occupied houses, and even then, those couple of homes are usually empty in the summertime. I decided to hop in my car and drive to the darker park to take in a meteor shower and learn to play my banjo, because that is totally normal and not creepy at all. I'm out there on a picnic table, plucking away, terribly, under the stars, and got this really uneasy feeling. Was that a shadow? What if someone shows up? What if someone's listening and starts singing? This is the burned car park. What if they came back? As I'm drowning in the silence with occasional string plucks to distract myself, I hear muffled voices in the brush, quick mumbles, then rustling. My heart dropped and my neck grew cold. There is no way this will be a normal interaction. My eyes struggle with the dark, scanning bushes, trying to find the shapes. The sounds grow closer and seem eerily high-pitched. Children? What the frick? Park ranger dies of a heart attack, found 3 days later still clutching banjo will be a good headline. That is the day I learned that coyotes have the run of the desert and don't worry about being quiet. 3 of them, bound through the creosote bushes with a yip or 2, passed close by me. No fricks given. This is the last time I ever played my banjo there. The Trailside Killer. In Northern California, late 70s, hiking with a friend, and I came across him at a rock outcropping on Mount Tam. He gave off a very discomforting vibe and we didn't hang around. We both independently recognized him when he was finally captured a few years later, and his picture was in the paper. If I'd been with my girlfriend, we might not be alive. He was a creepy-looking dude. A charming-looking fellow. I worked as a tree planter in northern Ontario, living in tents in very remote parts of the forest, like hours away from civilization, only accessible by logging roads. Strangest was from a fellow planter who found a backpack in the middle of this area with shoes, clothes, a wallet with a school ID, and a film camera. How it ended up there is a total mystery because this is no place for hiking or camping. Scariest for myself was waking up to my tent vestibule collapsed and a large bear claw rip which I apparently slept through, as well as turning a corner to a large wolf about 10 feet away, and returning to a spot I'd planted about 5 minutes earlier to fresh mama and bear cub prints. Realizing a bear family had sauntered behind me while my back was turned was very unsettling because you do not want to mess with a bear and her cubs. Canadian wildlife is scary, yo. The most surreal experience I had was during an off-trail hike in the Rockies in Colorado. I was extremely depressed and spending a day away from an awful ex. I wasn't really sure what my plan was, but I fell on my butt through ice into a shallow stream and I was crossing and just said, frick it. I'm not going back to my car. Well, just near the top of a steep hill, I almost stepped on some sort of leg bone. I was like, oh crap, that's cool. Until about 3 feet away, I saw several more limb bones and most of a spine between a couple of mounds. I didn't see fresh blood, but was certain it was regular territory for something that could frick me up. I kind of froze and looked around me since I didn't hear anything so far. I decided to get a few pics and then slowly left down the hill. About halfway down, I turned back up the hill because I figured I was overthinking it, and I really didn't want to go home. About 5 steps back up, and I definitely heard some sort of animal walking around the top of the hill, and I didn't stick around to see it. I slipped in the water again on my way out though. Bears were just chilling out in our campsite in New Mexico in the middle of the night making sounds. One random guy, not in our group, literally just gets out, grabs a stick, and chases them out while screaming. Man, that guy was wild. Didn't see, but heard. My husband and I were hiking in a state park in the East Coast. It was midday during the work week, so we maybe encountered 2 other people the 3 hours we were out and about. The only sounds we heard were from ourselves, our dog, and some birds or animals. All of a sudden, I hear mild chanting. I asked my husband if he heard it too, and he nodded but signaled for me to be quiet. My dog's ears were at full alert, and the hair on his back was standing straight up. We continued walking, and the noises turned into full-blown monk chanting. Think Halo Gregorian chant. It was clear as day, like I was standing right next to a speaker. To make myself feel better, I convinced myself some teens were hiding down there somewhere playing it on their phones. After 5 minutes of hearing it, it disappeared and we barely spoke a word for the last 3 miles back. Still creeps me out. There was an episode of Paranormal Witness that had this exact thing happen to some people in the woods by their house. There was absolutely no one around. Nope. I live in a beach community with a maritime forest nearby, and while hiking about 40 years ago, I found a huge sea turtle hanging by its neck from a tree. I bet the shell was 4 feet across. I figured someone was hoping to recover the shell after the flesh had rotted away, but I don't think the neck was going to hold up for that long. Definitely weird. I mean, surely that violates some sort of environmental protection law. I just hope that someone found an already deceased turtle to do that to, rather than killing one. Surrounded by crystal heads in an Australian national park at night, with no signal, they stopped us in our car at the gate. Maybe 5 of them hopped out and surrounded the car. Asked us if we knew where they could get any. I had my big Becker BK knife by my side. Thankfully, they left. Working in a rainforest in Southeast Asia many years ago, one of the things we did was trap moths at night. You'd sit in front of a big white sheet, with a lamp in front of it, powered by a generator, and then periodically go and see what insects had attached to the sheet. Incidentally, the insects attracted frogs, which attracted snakes, which attracted bigger things. Due to the noise and light, the trap was about a mile away from camp, so you'd be there at 3 a.m., all alone in the middle of a jungle. One cloudy night there wasn't much happening at the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. shift. I heard a rustle in the woods beside me. This wasn't unusual, but it was a bit bigger than I was used to hearing. The rustle came closer, and I started getting tense. It got closer still, and I was starting to think I was going to get mauled by a tiger. Suddenly, a disembodied face broke out of the tree line, screaming in an unintelligible language. I practically crapped myself, screamed a little, and the disembodied face disappeared back into the wood, issuing high-pitched giggles. It was only after my heart slowed that I realized one of the local lumberjacks had given me a jump scare using a torch under their face for spooky lighting. I wasn't even mad. It was hilarious. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It was 3 a.m. and everyone was KO'd in their tents. I was awoken by the sound of someone, or something, walking around my tent. I hear a distant but blood-curdling scream. For the next 30 minutes, I see a light waving around outside. I thought about going out to investigate, but didn't want to die. It took me a few hours to fall asleep. The next day, it turns out a cub was poking around our campsite. My friend was hammock camping, which probably piqued the cub's curiosity. It poked a claw through the hammock and left a sizable gash on his elbow. My friend said he didn't fall asleep for 2 hours and kept shining his flashlight around in case the cub returned with its mother or something. This happened about 6 feet away from me. Was on a camping trip in the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, and we woke up in the middle of the night to this incredibly loud slap and a splash out in the middle of the lake. Sound carries really well across water. Our first fear was that someone was shooting at us, and that was absolutely terrifying. Then we heard it again, a bit closer, and one of the guys realized it was a fricking beaver slapping its tail on the water before it dove below. My last trip up there, I was awoken from a midday nap by my buddies sing-songily screaming, "Bear!" Turns out we had made camp in the middle of a berry patch, and a bear was having a feast about 10 feet from my head. Was camping with my Boy Scout troop at the time, and woke during the middle of the night to footsteps and breathing. It got louder and more footsteps started. My bunkmates were up too at this point. Then we start to hear huffing and animal noises. Turns out the field our campsite was at was in the middle of an apparent cow crossing. Had to be at least 30 of them walking by at once. Definitely a scary moment to wake up to in the middle of the night, hearing a million footsteps and animal noises. FYI, cow pies were everywhere the next morning. A pack of dogs ran up on my wife and I while hiking out of the Grand Canyon at about 3 a.m. Very, very dark outside. Her and I had headlamps. We stopped, they stopped. All I saw was a bunch of glowing eyes and bushy-tailed silhouettes. After a beat, I realized they were working dogs for the reservation, so I just went, "Hey, puppers!" in the same voice I use for my dog, and they immediately went on their way. Ended up not being dangerous really, but I almost crapped myself. Was in the Big Bend National Park about 20 years ago prepping for a backpacking series presentation for REI. Big Bend is the western portion of Texas that dips downward along the bend of the Rio Grande that forms the border with Mexico. It's mixed high desert and smaller mountains, gorgeous place with a great history. I was hiking the area near Santa Elena Canyon, probably a couple of hours before sunset to try and get pics for the presentation. This area of the park opens into the comparatively flat sections of the basin, where the river broadens and the wildlife tends to be more diverse and obvious there. Hence, there I was. I was several hundred meters away from my van, which was parked in a designated lot at what passed for a trailhead at the time. As I approached the river basin near the mouth of the canyon, I saw something really unusual. So unusual, in fact, that it took a few seconds for my brain to sort the puzzle. Something was moving on the other side of the river, and it was big, man-sized, but low to the ground. The color of a deer, maybe? And shuffling along. It looked, for first impression, to be a medium-sized white-tailed doe lying on its side and moving like a snake. But that's not a thing that happens, so I moved closer to improve my line of sight. It was a mountain lion, a big cat. A big cat. It was creeping along, low-slung, hunting something that was probably no more than a stone's toss from where I was standing. I'd never seen one before, and when the visual information finally passed, I think my blood froze. Then it looks at me. I'll probably never forget that bit. You could see the little calorie calculator turning on in its eyes. I've never been so thankful for a river in my life. Granted, at this time, and maybe still, the river was very low due to drought and unauthorized, unlawful irrigation practices upstream, and you could likely cross at several points at this location with minimal risk, but it was still quite broad and definitely looked the part of a potent water barrier. Death Kitty does a series of double takes, head shifting from me to whatever the praise location is back and forth rapidly, said calorie counter and risk calculator, trying to get a fix on this evening's menu. I die a little, maintain my facing, and begin slowly and quietly moving away. Not sure if I wasn't worth it, if the river was too much of an X factor, or if the big un just really wasn't that into me, but no chase was given, and after breaking line of sight, I was able to get back to the van just fine, with no sign of pursuit and some mild tachycardia. That was the longest short walk I've ever taken. Later that night, I was parked off the main park road in an area where big cats commonly hunted. I'll always remember being parked there, in the middle of nowhere, munching on slightly stale Oreos and a bottle of water, listening to the occasional growl or scream of a big cat peel out of the darkness, and being thankful for my relatively fortunate position on the food chain. Also, one night I hallucinated on NyQuil, a side effect I regularly experienced with the quills, after getting a respiratory illness, and I woke up screaming, at a mountain, at 3 a.m., at the public campsite. But that's someone else's scary camping story. Oh no, yeah, I don't care that big cats normally don't bother attacking humans. If I saw one of those, I would be sprinting for my life. Sorry, kitty, you shall not taste the flesh of YouTube narrator today. Not really a park, but we were camped on a remote beach in northern Australia on an Aboriginal reserve. We had special permits. When we woke up in the morning, we noticed a huge trail drag and footprint where a croc had walked by our tent during the night. The croc was on the other side of the bay, assuming it was the same croc, and must have been at least 6 meters long. We packed and moved. I went running through a trail near my house one afternoon, headphones in and my mind elsewhere, just because I knew the path really well. I came around a bend. Through the gap in the trees about 20 feet in front of me, I locked eyes with a dead and rotting deer. Somehow it was postured in a way that made it look as though the corpse was staring through me. I turned and bolted out as fast as I possibly could. You should watch the movie The Ritual. Frick that movie. Still creeps the crap out of me that there are these kinds of woods where it's some kind of curse and of being guarded by some not-of-this-world kind of beast. I'm not a ranger, but I've hiked parts of the Appalachian Trail. This occurred in West Virginia, I believe. Happened about 8 years ago. Was hiking with a group. We spread out naturally based on hiking speed. I was in the middle-ish group of 4 of us, and one person had to stop to pull a tick off. Other 2, one leader, stayed with them, but I decided to hike on ahead and see if I could catch up with the lead group. The AT is extremely well marked with white blazes, so I wasn't worried about getting lost. I knew the next landmark was an old logging road, and sure enough, I hit it about a mile later. I decided I should wait for the rest of the group to catch up, so while waiting, I hiked a bit down the old overgrown road which ran perpendicular to the trail. There was a low stone wall along one side, and I was strolling along it, checking for anything interesting like artifacts and stuff, when it was like I crossed an invisible line. All of a sudden, it was like sound cut off. No birds or insects called, when seconds ago there had been multiple birds singing. Even leaves on the trees around me stopped rustling. It was just this sudden, unnatural, deafening silence. For whatever reason, I took a few more hesitant steps forward until I hit this invisible wall. It was like suddenly I was barraged by this feeling. I can only describe it as an intense unwelcome, as if I'd entered the house of someone I knew hated me, but multiplied by about 100. All of the hairs on my body stood straight up. I stopped dead in my tracks. The feeling was so strong that I didn't even want to turn my back. I couldn't see anything down the road, threatening or otherwise, that would give me this feeling. But I knew I had to leave immediately. I just knew I was not meant to be there, and if I stayed, something bad would happen. So I walked backwards slowly, never turning away from the road and trying really hard not to even blink. Finally, I crossed that invisible line again and I could hear birds singing and the leaves rustling. I didn't turn around until I heard the leader I'd left earlier asking me if there was anything cool down the road. I was like, nope, let's keep on going. Looking back, I figure it was a bear or a cougar or something just out of sight that my instincts managed to pick up on, but at the time, damn, it just felt creepy and almost paranormal. The silhouette of a massive humanoid figure, round head, no snout, at dusk, moving through the foliage at ridiculous speed. It was extremely loud, branches swinging, sticks snapping. Instinctively, I fled by foot, even though it wasn't coming in my direction. Left my ATV behind in the process. I was driven back later with others to retrieve it. Never saw it again, still don't know what it was. I was working at a remote mountaintop microwave radio site near Prince Rupert, BC in January. The road to the site was impassable even by snowcat due to deep snowdrifts. I had to be dropped off by helicopter in the morning and get picked up at the end of the day. The building was small, single-story, maybe 30 by 40 feet, windowless with a metal front door. I'm puttering away with music on, but otherwise not making a lot of noise when there's a knock on the door. I thought it was a bit odd that someone else would be up here with me, but I go to answer the door. Nobody there. I go out and look around. Nope, nothing, no prints or tracks. I figured maybe some ice had fallen and made a knocking sound. I go back inside and resume what I was doing. A couple of minutes later, there's a knocking on the door again, but longer duration this time. I open the door. Nobody. I go out and look around. Nothing. Go back to work. A minute later, knocking again. This time it sounds like someone is angrily pounding on the door to be let in. This time I open the door with my crowbar in hand. There was no doubt someone was there. Open the door and nobody. What the frick? Step out and look around, no sign of anyone again. I get the feeling someone is watching me. I'm peering into the bush around me and I see nothing. Something compelled me to look behind me, and that's when I met the amused gaze of a raven, perched on the roof edge, centered above the front door. They squawked a happy "rock, rock, rock" and flapped off to the tree line. Butthole. What's the first thing you realized after moving out of your parents' home? How beautiful the double-edged sword of freedom is. You can do whatever you want, but you have no safety net. If you don't manage everything, your life will happily run itself off the rails in a ton of tiny, insidious ways. Yep, it's crazy how quickly the crap hits the fan sometimes. Since leaving home, I have a whole new respect for my parents. Life is hard. I thought I could live on £350 until Christmas, so I took it out of my savings account and put it in my current account. Spent £9 a week on food at Iceland and Lidl, £2 on new socks, £8 on a new memory stick for uni, and I had to buy an Arduino for programming, which cost £60, and roughly £10 on drinks for a few nights in. That was all of my purchases. Spent just over £110 in 3 weeks and my account was completely empty. Where's the £350 gone? There was also £112 a week in rent, which I somehow forgot about. Lesson learned. That I finally had no one to explain myself to. I want to go out at 2 a.m? Just walk out the door. I come home at 4 a.m? Just walk in the door. I come home drunk with my own spew all over myself, just go in the toilet and question my existence while I clean up. Basically what I was going to say, except with the ending that you finally realize that it's nice to go to work and school not tired after you have no reason to stay out late and avoid your parents. Yep, now you're avoiding your roommates. And someday, if you're lucky, you'll be avoiding your spouse. Chicken doesn't have to be dry. Spaghetti sauce doesn't have to come from a can. Love my folks, but they are not chefs by any means. My mom thinks that chicken that is even a little juicy is raw and makes me burn her piece to perfection. It's so annoying. My mom is the same way. Chicken is pure white and juicy? She looks at it intently. Can you throw mine back on the grill? It's pink. I can see pink. Yeah, well, I'm seeing red, so hop in the oven yourself. Yeah, when I visit, my mom gets teed off at me because apparently I turn every meal into a production. My bad for making sure it's all fresh and tastes good. Wow, it's super easy to get fat. I've had the opposite. Without my mom pushing second helpings on me and trying to save money on food, I eat a far better number of calories for my lifestyle. Not sure the food is any healthier or worse for me, though. I guess it depends on the upbringing. If you have a mother who cooked portions for anorexic baby birds like some mothers, the food and its costs could well get on top of you. That I wasn't the messy one. When the person you're living with makes no effort to keep a place tidy, there's no incentive for you to either. You're either picking up two people's messes or picking up your own, but still feeling like it's always messy, so what's the point? After I move out, my apartment never has clutter, never has dishes in the sink, gets vacuumed regularly, etc. My mum's house, on the other hand, is still a disaster. People really scared me about bills. Oh, you're going to have to pay bills every month and it'll be the worst. Sure, it's not super nice having to take money and give it to various people at regular intervals, but it's not stressful. Living with my parents was way more stressful than paying bills has ever been. Back in the day, when you can't find your bill in the mail, people start stressing hard. A lot of old people still don't know they can pay online or just don't know how to use autopay. I mean, I have the mild annoyance that I can't get everything to autopay from my credit card. There's always one or two that are like, what the frick is Visa? It's nice being able to jerk it in my room with sound. Did your parents forbid the use of headphones? No, but you had to be able to hear them approaching. A small thing, but I have two younger brothers who are always quite greedy and selfish with food. My mum would buy a limited amount of snack food, and once it was gone until the next big food shop. My brothers would dive in like locusts and eat all of the crisps, chocolate, ice cream, or whatever and leave nothing for me. It's been 10 years since I moved out, and I never stop being happy that the chocolate I bought a week ago and I'm looking forward to after work is still there when I get home. It's nice having control over your own stuff. I have 5 siblings, so my when I grow up fantasy was literally to buy a bag of Sun Chips and eat the entire thing by myself. It took me a year after moving out of my parents' house to do it. I think on some level I was still convinced it would disappear. I have 4 future stepchildren. I stopped buying junk food because one of them will eat it all in 2 days. This leaves nothing for the other 3, and she's already overweight at 12. Now they only get fresh fruit and cheese sticks for snacks. We also have one homemade sugary treat on Saturday. It was this or individual locked boxes for each kid. I think you're doing the right thing. Don't make a fuss over the overeater and just include healthy foods. When they're adults buying and prepping their own foods, they can make their own mistakes. It's so fricking quiet. The first night I looked up at my ceiling and I actually had silence. I was so happy it was hard to sleep that night. Oh my god, you can have this magnificent, absolute silence whenever you want. On the flip side, it can sometimes get very lonely if you don't have a lot going on with the rest of your social life. I went a few months without a roommate and it's nice for sure, but sometimes laying there at night is weird. You can't just walk out into the living room and just shoot the crap and laugh and joke with somebody while you drink orange juice out of the jug in your pajamas for a few minutes before going back to bed. Most of the habits you have are actually your parents' habits they passed on to you. I also noticed that not everyone who moves out of their parents' house realizes this. My wife and I argue frequently, though not in a serious way, that the other loads the dishwasher wrong because our parents had different dishwasher habits. I choose who I let come over. This is big. I hated most of my brother's friends and most of the people I lived with. Mum's fiancé and his kids and grandkids irritated the crap out of me. Now it's just me and whoever I invite over. It's beautiful. I can't afford all those extra things I usually throw in my parents' grocery trolley. And how expensive the essentials like toilet paper and dish soap add up to be. And how it's a chore in itself remembering to write them on the list and actually purchase them. It's easy to think you're doing super well with money before you start paying for incidentals and household stuff. So true, I remember my first trip to the store about a month and a half after I went to college. I had a pretty tight budget of about $250 a month that my parents gave me to spend on random things, which, by the way, I know is extremely generous of my parents to give me, and I'm exceedingly grateful that they did. I went to the store thinking, okay, all I need is some toilet paper, that should be pretty cheap. I'll still have plenty of money to buy some booze and eat out with friends a few times. Maybe I'll have enough to get a new video game. Then I walked down the aisle and realized pretty quickly that I needed a lot more than just TP. I was nearly out of laundry detergent, shampoo, deodorant, trash bags, etc. By the time the clerk was done ringing it all up, the bill was north of $100, which was further punctuated with the knowledge that my car was basically on empty and that I needed to stop on the way home and get gas. I sat at home that night knowing that I had like $90 of spending money for the rest of the month. It was a harsh moment of reality when my friends wanted me to go out and I had to tell them I couldn't afford it. I learned pretty quickly that I needed to make a budget and not take all of those small household items for granted. That the dish fairy didn't move in with me. You'll soon realize that the dish fairy was inside you all along. The ghost sounds I was hearing all the time was my parents doing the deed. Spooky. God damn, I miss my dad. God damn, am I glad to be away from my mother. Oh, I can bring boys into the house. That everything costs money. Rent costs money, council taxes cost money, heat costs money, water costs money, electricity costs money, groceries, guess what, cost money, petrol costs money, maintenance costs money, TV license costs money, just living costs money. I was in no way spoiled or sheltered when I was growing up, but even I was shocked by the expenses of everything. I dread to think how much my parents must have been spending every month just to keep a family of 5 alive. Makes me appreciate them even more, and I feel awful about how I used to moan about not having stuff when I was growing up. A fairly high amount of the comments on the cost of living in this one. I would suspect that's the biggest factor when you move out, although some of us delayed the issues of bills by living in student accommodation and just clump it all together. That I actually don't mind a little bit of order in my house. Oh, I hear ya. Nothing like coming home to no surprises. It's also kind of weird. I live with my parents still, but I was completely alone for a few weeks last year, and for some reason it was really odd to come home and find that nothing had moved. I mean, of course, the first thing you notice is that those dishes aren't going to do themselves, but it wasn't just about the work I had to do, it was the little things. Like putting some letter on a table and it staying there for days unless I moved it myself. Seeing those objects stuck in the same place every time you came home kinda makes you notice how much the house actually lives when everyone else is there. It's so gosh darn quiet. Gloriously quiet. I laid on my floor of my empty apartment living room like, oh my god, yes. How much they actually took care of. Those frickers own a house, cabin, a condo, and manage every single bill they have while working more than full-time jobs. The kicker? They still have free time. Like what the frick, parents, I can barely make breakfast and be out the door on time, yet you all just made a 5-course breakfast and have finished half your emails in the same time. It made me appreciate how damn efficient they were with their time. I can eat whatever I want for every meal of every day. So how many boxes of Pop-Tarts is that a week? When I was 15, my mom went to prison and my dad was a drunk. So I was in charge of the food stamps, $500 a month. The grocery store had a sale and Pop-Tarts were $1. Guess who had 300 boxes of Pop-Tarts? The freedom from someone else dictating your life, which was absolutely worth all of the other responsibilities that go with living on your own. It's not even close. That I can make a sandwich at 3 a.m. and no one can be mad at me. It was liberating. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The amount of peace I got and the mental fatigue that got lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I couldn't do anything at home without being judged. Unfortunately, my mom has this habit of randomly stopping by unannounced in the middle of the day, especially on weekends when I'm just trying to sit in my bathrobe and drink beer and play video games for a few hours in the middle of the daylight. And then she's always so obviously condescending about it and it feels like crap. Like, sorry mom, I got a degree in a field where I can get weekends off, if I work 9 to 5 all week. I don't see why I should have to get up and be super productive every freaking Sunday as well. The other thing that bothers me a lot is that she doesn't really understand what my work is. Energy management and engineering analysis type stuff. So she kind of dismisses it as if I don't actually have to do any work, and my existence is some kind of stress-free fairy tale life. It tees me off. How much I didn't miss it. My roommate was calling home constantly and terribly homesick, but I never felt that. I somehow have a closer relationship with my family after moving out than I did while I lived with them, and their house never fully felt like a home to me. The saying, home is where the heart is true even if you're not talking about being in love. I wasn't close with my family, and I didn't feel like that house was much of a home. I lived in an apartment with my best friends from 2012 to 14, and I still miss that terribly at times. I don't really need to eat. Who would bother? What is dinner? Living on my own made me really wish eating was optional. The house needed a lot of day-to-day supplies, so the first few shopping trips were insanely expensive. Things like cooking oils, flour, sugar, saran wrap, tinfoil, garbage bags, mops, brooms, plungers, flashlights, etc. You don't really realize how many things you need on hand when you already had them for years with your parents. When I first moved into my apartment, one of the worst things was rebuilding my pantry or spice cabinet. Cooking dinner was always a challenge because there were always little things I forgot that my parents' house just always had. Making chicken tacos and need some seasoning? I'll just grab that Cajun stuff my mum buys. Oh wait, all I have is salt and pepper packets from Wendy's. Guess that's not happening. I've been on my own for mostly a year now, and there's still things that I don't ever think of that my parents always had, like skewers and tongs and a whisk and a hand mixer. Never thought I would have to make do with so little simply because I forgot about stuff. One of the first days in my apartment, I dropped food on the floor and instinctively called the dog over to clean it up. Didn't have a dog anymore. That's why I got one from my place. Also, it helps me to not feel lonely. That I had made a huge mistake. However, I could sit as close to the TV as I wanted and stand there with the refrigerator door open and cool the whole neighborhood. I'm all alone and can do whatever I want, whenever I want. Living alone, everything in the fridge spoils so gosh darn fast. Cooking huge portions is awesome. It's relatively cheap and makes for really easy dinners throughout the week. Yeah, I load up the crock pot, go to work, come home to dinner, and have portions to freeze. I'm not sure where this falls between awesome independence and burning your apartment to the ground by accident. I guess that's unlikely, but I would be terrified to leave a cooking implement on at home without me there all day. When I lived at my mum's, I had to ask for permission to shower. When I moved out, I would ask my roommate if I could shower. It wasn't until a couple of months of living together that she told me I didn't have to ask and I could just shower. I had no idea it was a weird thing to ask permission for, that and a lot of other things. Toilet paper doesn't just magically appear in the cupboard. You actually have to remember to go and buy it. There was a reason my dad was so crazy about what the thermostat was set to. That crap gets expensive. That the real world is easy. I was 18 when I moved out. I'd already been paying for my car and car insurance, health insurance, and taking care of myself, clothes, food, dog, financially for years because my mum was incapable of taking care of herself, let alone her daughter. I've always been the one to cook and clean and budget money and take care of myself and others. My family would ask how it is to not live with my mum and living on my own, asking as if it was a huge shock or anything like that. Other than having less spending money, it was exactly the same as living with my alcoholic, hardly home mother. My childhood might have been heck, but I grew up fast and I was able to migrate to living on my own and adulthood seamlessly. If she's not proud of you, I'm proud of you. You grew up strong. Keep on keeping on. That being an adult is way less scary than it was made out to be. It isn't normal to spend a whole 12-hour day once a week going over finances. It isn't normal for it to take 2 months to resolve a phone call with a company. Cleaning the house shouldn't take a whole week. Driving isn't that bad. My mum made me terrified to be an adult, and now I'm handling it just freaking fine. I'm really teed off at how anxious she made me. My parents were chain smokers. My whole life I lived in a smoke-filled house. The first time I came back from college, I was hit with a wave of stale cigarette smoke. I realized 2 things. Cigarette smoke smells like butt, and I figured why I grew up with pretty non-stop allergies and asthma. Why anyone would willfully fill their house with that crap is beyond my understanding. Same. I was the only person in my house that didn't smoke. Even my young sister was smoking by 13, and because of that, all of my clothes stank of smoke, and people would ask me if I'd been smoking. I'd never even tried one. I never realized how bad it was until I moved away for a few months. I lived with people who smoked, but they'd maybe had 1 or 2 while they were home, and if it was warm enough, they'd go outside. When I moved back, I felt like I was sick all the time and I would get horrible headaches. I suffered headaches before this, but the doctors said it was stress headaches, but obviously we knew what it is now. One day I was sat in the living room trying to eat and my nan, who I lived with, started to come in and light up. I asked her repeatedly to go into the kitchen and smoke instead, and she wouldn't, and I just went mental, flipped the table over, and stayed at my boyfriend's that night. Toilet paper that doesn't feel like sandpaper is too expensive. You buy cheap ketchup, the cheap bread, store-brand Advil, whatever, but you do not go with the cheap toilet paper. Yeah, and you've only got one butthole for the rest of your life. Treat it with the respect it deserves. Don't get me started on how coddled the modern butthole is. Dust is real. Very real. When I set down something, it's where I left it when I go to get it later. I had a free ride all of my life until moving out. I can pee with the door open. It's a way of life now. That cleaning isn't such a chore as parents make it out to be. I clean 1 day a week on a Saturday for about 3 hours and that's it. Everything is done. I just make sure to clean up after myself as best as I can. Sometimes I'll admit I'll leave that thing out on my coffee table for a while, or leave dirty clothes near my laundry basket but not quite in it. But it's no biggie, small messes here and there. Still in the end, just a few hours on a Saturday to vacuum, Clorox, Windex and Lysol everything, and it's clean for another week. I also realized that most of the messes my parents would complain about were the ones that they made themselves that got out of control and then they would pin it on me to help clean it up. Now everything is clean, no one nags for it to be cleaner since it's already spotless, and it's wonderful. I came here to post along the same lines. When I lived at home, somehow every kitchen mess was my mess to clean. They did fine with everything else, but the kitchen always had stacks of dishes, piles of mail, countertops full of crumbs, etc. I moved out, bought my own house. I deep clean my kitchen once every 1.5 to 2 weeks to keep it tidy the rest of the time. Their kitchen is exactly the same as when I left. Of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that you are 1. Living in a space significantly smaller than your parents, and 2. Not cleaning up after as many people. Keeping clean a 5-bed, 4-bath house while raising 2 children and working full-time is exactly as much of a chore as your parents made it out to be. That not everything needs to be immediate. Growing up, if my parents told me how to do something, they meant now. Dishes needed to be done now, trash needs to be done now, lawn needs to be mowed now. When I moved out, most adults in my life assumed it would go to crap because I seemed lazy. But really, it just let me do what I needed to do at my own pace instead. Dishes can sit a day or 2, trash can wait a bit. Not everything is an emergency. I kind of had the opposite happen. When I was married and asked my husband to do something, never said, "Do it now," just that I needed his help. His default answer was, "Not right now," which translated to no. My significant other is so different. I mentioned in passing that there was a thing, old shelf component, sticking out of the pantry wall, and that this thing needs to go. He stopped what he was doing, got a flashlight and the drill, and took care of it on the spot. This blew my mind. I thanked him profusely, and continue to do so whenever he helps me out. He does the same, so nobody feels taken advantage of. It's such a nice change of pace. That I didn't have to account for all of my comings and goings, report where I was and when I'd be back, and when I came home, I didn't have that pit in my stomach that I had at my parents' house, knowing I would no longer be interrogated and criticized for whatever I was doing. I knew my parents were controlling and manipulative, but I didn't realize how bad it was until I left. Best decision ever. The skyrocket of my self-esteem. There was no one to call me fat or tell me my clothes and hair were ugly or stupid. The constant criticism and drunken abuse vanished. It was no longer my responsibility to get my loser brother doing things or meeting people. He's 3 years older than me. I still see my mum and dad most weekends, but as soon as my mum starts drinking, I get to peace out and go home. What is something your teacher did that really wrecked your school experience? In GCSE English, he taught us the wrong novel for almost the entire term. We'd read this book over and over, answered essays and remembered and studied every significant narrative meaning. Apparently, none of the faculty heads had checked up on him until about 6 weeks before our exams, when they realized all our work was on a book not even on the syllabus, and all our time was effectively wasted. So to rectify, we lost all of our PE sessions, had to stay late after school 3 days a week, and spend 3 out of 5 lunch breaks cram learning the actual book with another teacher. Safe to say, our class wasn't happy at all, and most parents complained about it as it could affect our ability to pass the exams. Oh my god, this sounds just like my GCSE history class. Teacher went off sick for almost all the school year and only left one note for the supplies, which was to read and copy out a single page in the textbook. So for 5 months we had multiple different substitute teachers writing out the same page. Eventually we got a college lecturer to help us out, but we had to miss our PE lessons and catch up on history. And we had to come into school during the summer holidays to be taught by private tutors. We pretty much all failed. Head teacher of my high school tried to expel me for having an epileptic seizure in front of him, said I was a danger and a distraction to other pupils and was disrupting his school. I ended up being kept out of school for 2 months while my parents fought my case. In that time, almost all of the rest of the teaching staff, who were furious with this decision, kept me supplied with work and even one-to-one tutoring when needed. This was in a rural area where the next nearest school was 40 miles away, so we had no other school choice. Happy ending, I finished the year with the top grades in my exams. The head teacher had to present me with a prize in front of the whole school. While he was shaking my hand and saying a very forced, "Well done," I replied, "No thanks to you." The applause etc. covered it, so no one else heard me, but he for sure did. My brother was finding his balance of medication while in high school and would have a seizure every so often in class. That by itself is embarrassing. Why the heck would somebody make it that much more difficult for you? I'm sorry, friend. People suck. I can't believe that someone who runs a school and is presumably regularly attending programs to update his skill set and hears about current events in education could react so crappily to the existence of a student with a somewhat common condition. Appalling. 40-degree weather, Celsius, in outback Australia, and she wouldn't turn the aircon on in class even though it worked. Her reason was that when she was young she didn't have aircon and she survived. Yeah, nah, all the students hated her. Mine was the reverse. Middle of winter up in the Blue Mountains, B-word wouldn't even turn the heater on in the mornings because she grew up without heated classrooms. And it's like, yeah, but you guys were also allowed to wear giant frickin' coats, weren't you? Where didn't they have heated classrooms? There's a schoolhouse by me built in the 1850s and they have a wood stove in the front. At university, my professor didn't tell us the time of our examination, despite numerous emails from 20-odd students as well as the head professor of the course. This exam could have been any time from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I lived 90 minutes from campus and I relied on crap public transport to get into uni. It got to 9 p.m. the day before the exam, no one knew when the exam would be and if we missed it, we would fail the whole module. So I took the train to the city where my uni is, booked a cheap, crappy hotel room for the night just to make sure I was there on time. We all took the exam at 12 p.m. after getting an email an hour before the exam was being held, so I wouldn't have made it in time if I'd stayed at home. Worst part was that no one cared, not the professor, the course lead, or the head of our school. They just left 30 students in the lurch, allowing them to potentially fail the exam and therefore the module. In my second semester of my first year of law school, everyone in my class, 80+ people, had to take a research class. This class was taught by 4 different law librarians but followed the same syllabus. It was also worth 1 credit. These librarians ran the class as if it was 3 credits. We had to read, conduct legal research, write 2 memos throughout the semester when we had 5 other classes, all within the 2 to 4 credit range. Plus 1 specific class that was notoriously difficult. Anyway, halfway through the semester, my class gets teed off at the workload to credit ratio, and someone starts a petition to reduce the number of assignments and or change the grading for the class from a letter grade to a pass or fail. Almost the entire class signs, there are a few holdouts. The student who started the petition delivers it to the librarians. The librarians remove 1 or 2 assignments, but otherwise disregard the petition. Those who signed all awkwardly suffered through the rest of the semester. It's so annoying to only get 1 credit for a big class. Once a teacher said about a 1-credit class, "Actually, this class should have more credits, but there weren't any left when dividing the credits." It also happens that classes are 0 credits and you're still scheduled to pass them. It's weird how the credits are divided. A study year is worth 60 credits, then the credits are just divided somehow over all the classes no matter how many classes and how much workload there is. The weirdest thing that happened was when my major shared a common subject with a different major. We had different but overlapping majors. This was one of the overlapping subjects. Because the other majors had less subjects total, this subject was worth more credits to them than my major, because we all had to get 60 credits in a year, no matter the amount of subjects and the workload. Forced us to make a donation to charity. When I didn't bring anything in, I got a demerit. Had to argue that not everyone has the ability to give something away. She then told me off for backchatting in front of the class. Everyone was like, "What the frick?" My God, you just gave me a flashback. I remember I had a teacher. She never actually taught me. I don't even know what her position at the school was. She yelled at me for not bringing in canned foods for the food drive. She said I was lazy and not thinking of those less fortunate. She even took my agenda out of my desk and wrote it in my daily calendar to bring food. Like, sorry, I can't bring in food I don't have, B-word. Joke's on her though, I never used that agenda anyways, and I still didn't bring stuff in. My work sent me on a 3-day advanced Adobe Illustrator course last April in London. Just before the exam, the tutor said, "Oh, by the way, there may be a few questions on this exam that we haven't talked about. Just do your best." What the actual frick, my work's just paid £1,000 for this. His response was that he can't be expected to teach everything. There was about 6 students in the class and we were all pretty teed off. Can't be expected to teach everything. Yes, he is. It's his job. Make everyone come to college from 10 a.m. till 11:30 to hold presentations. Be 45 minutes late. Not tell students they aren't allowed to see each other's student presentations and thus make them be at school at 10 a.m. without reason. Somehow take up 3 times the amount of allocated time per presentation group. Finish at 18 instead of 11:30. Let most of the students fail or just barely pass. In that particular order. She didn't believe in field trips because she said that kids would have too much fun, and learning isn't supposed to be fun. However, the entire grade would take the trip, so she was required to take us. She would make us all sit in a common area of the zoo, museum, etc., and she would hold classroom lessons. It was so upsetting to hear about all the cool things the other kids got to see while we had class. The fact that I still remember things I learned on fun field trips compared to the countless times I was in classrooms says a lot. He would act like he was enlightened and say stuff like, "Video games rot your brain. All your free time should be spent on education as that is all that matters." But then during the lessons, he would go completely off topic and start talking about random crap. Apparently, he's making a board game that could compete with chess because he's just that brilliant. Screamed at the class because he assumed that an intermittent beeping sound that occurred throughout the lecture was somebody receiving texts. It was the projector that he was using, alerting him to the fact that it was overheating. Dumb idiot. That's almost as good as the time a substitute tried to confiscate a student's phone when it beeped. It was a diabetes monitor attached to the student's body. My friend with an insulin pump was sent to the office by the security guard because she refused to take off her pager. Cell phones weren't really a thing until my senior year or so. He called her a liar when she said it was a medical device. Principal was pretty unhappy with that one. When you combine crappy teachers and people who don't understand how technology works, you get a real Venn diagram for unfair punishment, I suppose. I had a college professor who was teaching a history course to a bunch of education majors in their junior year. She would ask us questions all the time about things she hadn't yet lectured on, and then pull the, "Really? No one knows the answer to this? Well, I guess we'll just wait for someone to answer." We were all education majors. We knew that trick. We waited her out every single time. She always broke first. For those wondering, what's the trick? This was a poorly executed attempt at using the Socratic method. It's better to have students arrive at an answer themselves than it is to tell them. However, you have to first create an environment of trust and respect so that students are comfortable enough to risk a wrong answer. And you have to be willing to provide a bit of scaffolding should no one know. The professor did neither of those things. Our French teacher held a 5-minute detention for the entire class because we waited outside the classroom for her to let us in. You know, like polite kids do. She claimed we were wasting her time and sent a detention note home to all the parents. Better still, on result days, she said, "Wow, I didn't expect you to get an A." During English-controlled assessments, she would play whale noises in the background to help us focus. "Class, to help you focus, I've put on calming whale noises." Whale mating video starts playing. Isn't that better? We were about 10 or 11 years old. It was the last period of the day and the music teacher was subbing our science class. He was sitting on the computer and we were all getting on with work. Toward the end of the day, our homeroom teacher comes into the classroom and exclaims, "It's the end of the day, why are you not all packed up?" To which the music teacher replied, "I told them and they refused to." Excuse you? He hadn't said a thing to us, so we all protested. Even so, our homeroom teacher told us off for being disobedient as the music teacher slithered out of the room and we had to stay 10 minutes late as punishment. Lying snake. Why was not packing up such a problem? Honestly, I have no clue. The homeroom teacher had a tendency to get funny about random things, but generally she was really nice and one of our favorite teachers. She's a family friend, and now that I'm older, I know she's an alcoholic and had problems with her marriage then. I would guess that it has something to do with that. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. 2 words. Collective punishment. If you're an educator and you want your whole class to instantly hate you, this is how you do it. Another thing I remembered, we had to go to a nearby sports field for PE, which was about a 10-minute walk from the school. We only had a 5-minute gap between lessons. No matter how many times we explained we had PE, some teachers would always kick up a fuss if we were late to the lesson after PE. It also led to students missing the school bus if you had PE as the last session of the day. I'm pretty sure some parents complained because they started ending PE lessons 5 to 10 minutes earlier. I think collective punishment is supposed to make the whole class hate the one student who was acting out. In reality, obviously, it's the teacher who comes off as the bad guy. How ironic. The class was doing a project on criminal justice and held a mock trial. My friend got assigned to play the role of a victim of inappropriate behavior from an adult. In real life, she had actually been the victim of this kind of behavior. She felt it would be too emotionally draining and tried to get out of the part. The teacher wanted an explanation, but my friend kept saying it was very personal. This went back and forth a few times over the next 2 days, and it was just not clicking in the teacher's head. Finally, he lost his patience and yelled out, "You're holding up this whole project for everyone. Why the heck is this so difficult for you?" With the whole class paying attention, she admitted the reason why. She had had this kind of thing happen to her before in real life, and she went to go cry. They changed the topic of the project after that, but the class never really looked at the teacher the same way again. Not just the class, but the whole school. She got a bunch of teachers fired because of petty office politics, and those teachers were older and more beloved than her. Gave a C to an 85% test because she gives grades relative to the average performance of a student. My siblings once got an F for making a single mistake on the entire test. The reasoning was that it was a bonus grade anyway. Sounds like my friend that got downgraded from an A to a B because he used pain instead of sores. No other mistake than that. Our teacher in that class was second to the most hated, only because he wasn't as much of a C word as the first. This happened in my class as well. In English class, English as a second language, a classmate used perhaps, but he was downgraded since that wasn't a word we'd learned yet. He should have used maybe. Demoting his grade for learning ahead. Always an excellent plan to promote learning. You know, after reading that, I'll thank my lucky stars for always having dedicated and involved teachers who rewarded students for going the extra mile, rather than bringing our grades down for it. You would assume that was a thing you wouldn't have to be thankful for. Teacher spent weeks teaching us the shin lever method of learning about natural science instead of teaching from the book. On test day, he gave us the test that came with the teacher's version of the book, so we'd never even covered the info on the test. We all scored poorly, but learned to ignore him in class and study the book on our own. Google isn't telling me about this shin lever method. What is it? His name was Mr. Shinlever, and his method was to teach us the things he remembered from college about natural science, none of which was covered in our 9th grade textbooks. Oh my god, how did he get the job? My German teacher would make you retake spelling tests until you got 100%. Once you did, you could sit and do whatever you like until the whole class got 100%. This caused a lot of pressure on everyone, as he used to belittle the students who didn't pass first or the second time. If you were the only one left, he would stand over you and watch you struggle. One test day, I decided to bunk off and got caught. I burst into tears and explained how horrible this teacher was and that I'm never going back into his class. I was moved into a higher set German class with an amazing teacher and my German improved. When I was a sophomore in high school, there was a shooting at an elementary school in my town. I'm sure you could figure out which one. And we went into lockdown. My math teacher proceeded to hand out the test we were supposed to take that day and told us to have it done by the end of the lockdown drill. No matter how many students complained or tried to tell her what was going on at the school, she remained adamant that it was just a drill even when they started reporting death counts. None of us looked at her the same afterwards. Holy crap, this is the worst one in this thread. This was second year, or 12th grade, in school. My teacher, unable to manage 20 of these rowdy kids, is pretty enraged by the end of the class. She has a thing about counting every piece of equipment after class, and she begins counting the Newton meters. Now, if you don't know what these are literally a metal spring with plastic around it that measures how much a thing weighs. This teacher counted 19 when there was definitely 20. She holds us back for lunch. She brings the faculty head in, and we get a bollocking from her. Cannot steal from the school, unjust, yada yada yada. If we were rowdy before, we're raging now, and she requests the least well-behaved kids open their bags. Of course, these kids are protesting, but the teacher offers detention if they don't comply. So after rummaging through a bunch of pubescent kids' bags and finding nothing, she finally goes back to her desk to find the Newton meter sitting behind her "World's Best Teacher" mug. Look on her face, priceless. I would pay to watch the look on her face. The fact that she found it behind her "World's Best Teacher" mug is even more hilarious. That mug was promptly retired from duty. Pretty standard teacher stuff, keeping the whole class in at lunch for something one person had done. It was the fact that the school had a very clear behavior and punishment policy that teachers and pupils alike understood that teed us off because she blatantly broke it just to prove a point. To explain, someone's phone went off in class. At that school, at that time, that meant having your phone taken off you and getting it back at the end of the day. Fair do. The someone whose phone it was, however, refused to admit that it was them. This teed the class off to begin with. Then the teacher said that we'd all have to come back at lunch. The lesson was after break, so we had another lesson before lunch if I recall correctly, and if we didn't, we'd have an hour's detention after school. Being a goody-goody, I didn't want an hour's detention on my record, so I turned up, but did at least start eating my packaged lunch and dared her to tell me not to. I'd like to know if she ever chased up the people who didn't turn up. This maths teacher had a reputation for being a real brute and gave a lot of spontaneous tests. He played up one specific revision test, which was right before midterm or final I think, as being a really big deal where the result would reflect whether you have any potential in the subject and the usual dramatic spiel. After we did them, he went on holiday and took the tests with him to correct. Mother fricker forgot to bring them back and nobody ever got their result. Another bonus, this same teacher had a double period before a double period of gym, and sometimes 10 minutes before the bell goes, he'd just say, "We haven't covered enough, so instead of gym, you'll just have to do double maths now." She ended up leaving for her vacation earlier than she'd thought, so our final projects needed to be done 3 days early. Not a big deal if she hadn't told us on 2 days' notice. I don't get how teachers get away with this crap. We had our teachers change the exam topic. I took graphic design as a GCSE, my practice exam was an A grade. They then changed the exam to resistant materials with about 2 weeks' notice. I ended up with a C grade in my GCSE. Only one person got to do the exam we studied for because their mother went ballistic. Our religious studies exam teacher taught us the syllabus for the wrong exam board, so we had to go to school for 3 days during the Easter holidays to learn an entire new syllabus. Numerous times they failed students at an exam, then publicly admitted that passing 40 to 50% of students that took the exam would be too much, and that's considered normal behavior. I absolutely hate this. There was this teacher at my old university who just so happens to be the father of one of my closest friends. I was very confused in the beginning when everyone hated him because to me he seemed like a nice guy. I find out later he takes pride in failing his students and will actively fail anyone he feels isn't interested or putting in enough effort. One of my favorite professors said it best: "If half your students fail your class, you've failed as an educator for half those students." Got caught on my phone in class, took it away and put it in her drawer and managed to lose it. Everyone gets searched apart from her, and she was a supply teacher. I think it was some girl in my class. I got my 3DS taken away, and when I got it back, the admin at the front desk said they played it and ruined whatever I was doing. I was rightly teed off, but I didn't want to get into any more trouble. Mine turned off the AC to punish the people passing notes. She yelled at my friend for missing so much class. He was obviously at chemo. He looked like it, the whole school knew, including faculty, and he said, "I have cancer," and walked out. He sadly passed away 3 months later of leukemia. He wouldn't let the class go until everyone rolled some dice, and if you got 6 on any of the 2 dice, you could leave. I got so many tardy slips and calls home because of him. What was the reasoning? To create more timelines? A gambling addiction, probably. Math teacher. Class, it's test time. But professor, you said yesterday that today we wouldn't have to take a test. Correct. You will not take a test. You'll take 2 one-hour tests in a single hour. What's the most disastrous email fail that occurred in your workplace? Had a management peer send out a long screed about the state of the men's crapper on our floor. Very descriptive. Went out to all the men on the floor and a whole bunch of customers. HR sent out a terrible email about restroom cleanliness to my entire office. They sent an email complaining about crap stains on a toilet seat and a used tampon that was placed on the trash receptacle instead of inside of it. They even decided to attach pictures of both problems along with the email. I'm not sure of any repercussions of this email, but there were a lot of unhappy people in our office after opening the attached images. A design artist at a print shop I worked at 10 years ago, I'll call her Zed, had always been one of those flaky but only just good enough to keep types. She'd create files that looked fine to customers and on screen, but required craploads of pre-press defrickery to make printable. Zero real technical skill when it should have been half her job. One day, a little after lunch, a company-wide email from Zed to her husband came through where she described waiting with glee for the opportunity to purposely frick up a big repeat yearly job right before she planned to quit 8 months later. A lot of print jobs are on a yearly cycle with local businesses. This happened in February and referred to a 40k job that came around every October. As IT relief, I got called in to check what happened, and sure enough, Zed's other emails, sent on her workstation's email address to her husband, described other stupid things she was planning, and referred to one of her husband's friends who worked for a rival print shop, so it was clear it was a bit of sabotage and probably upcoming poaching. Zed was fired less than an hour after the email was sent. I didn't mention to my bosses that the email to all the staff was sent when I knew Zed was out of the office and had originally been sent before she went to lunch, and originally only to her husband. Our other designer, a quiet mousy type who could actually do the work, had seen the earlier set of emails at other times she needed to use Zed's workstation and had copied and pasted this completely revealing email into a new email to the whole company from Zed's workstation. I just told her later in passing that I got her email about Zed and gave her a thumbs up. I'm sure the schadenfreude was enough for them, but quiet mouse designer deserves more than a thumbs up. Oh, she got a new co-worker not long after who was also a good worker, no more constant picking up after Zed. Two of the partners at my old firm were having a not very discreet affair. Both were married to other people. Partner A was in charge of the summer associate program and sent an email around the firm with information on the summers, names, schools, etc., who would be mentors for who, dates of events, etc. Partner B replied, all, to a 500-plus person law firm, attorneys, paralegals, secretaries, everybody, I'm going to pork you so hard later. It was hilarious for several reasons, including his ultra-seductive use of the word pork. I hope someone replied, sounds delicious, count me in. From coworker 1 to everyone. Subject, porking. Everybody get in here. The original story was good, but these replies are Reddit gold. Fantastic work, everybody. Also, note to self, do not have email affairs in the office. A coworker of mine was trying to motivate their sales office and was saying to get your hands dirty, and if we had any difficulties closing a sale, the girls should shake their little butts and close the sale. Reached our CEO. She wasn't there long. I was a temp in a very large law firm for a bit. One day, a new lawyer was hired, and HR sent out the standard email to everyone introducing the new guy and congratulating him on his new position. New guy then replies to all and asks the HR person if his benefits package pays for a hair transplant procedure. I used to work at a law firm, and one day an email went out to everyone, about 40 people, that was about a specific case and had very little relevance to my job position, so I ignored it. A few minutes later, I got another email from a different attorney with a snarky response. Well, an argument started between these two attorneys, still replying all to the office, and after about 6 or so emails, a third attorney wrote, yeah, well, my dad can beat up your dad. By the way, you've been sending this to the whole office. At my firm, about 50 employees, there's a partner that used to reply all to conflict checks and other emails that are sent to all employees with, X City says hello. Right up until the day when another partner replied with, no one gives a frick about where you are today, Bob. Stop being an attention whore. Kind of the same thing but different. I used to work for a company that was a vendor for Abercrombie & Fitch. I would send emails to different people that work at Abercrombie every day. One day, I sent a request to someone at the company and got an out-of-office reply that basically said, I am no longer with A&F, F this crap, F this place, everyone here sucks. I laughed my butt off for a few minutes, then called a buddy that works there. Pretty soon the whole company was sending emails to this account just to read the reply. It took about an hour for their IT department to get wind and take it offline. One dude mailed one of those Great American Gas Out things to all 6,000 plus employees. The CEO did a reply all saying something like, Exxon is one of our biggest clients, and using company resources for your own political agenda is against company policy. Reply all to a big group is one thing, but I don't understand how companies of more than 50 people still allow anyone to use the all employees group address. There are 50k employees in my company. There are several email distro addresses that include them all. It is heck when someone mucks up that one. People would type their password into group chats thinking they were logging into a particular system. I heard about someone where I worked that meant to send out an email to the whole department, a couple of dozen people, to let them know that for their birthday they brought in donuts for everyone. People do this all the time. This guy, however, selected the email list for the whole company instead of the department. They were getting replies from employees in other countries saying things like, "Well, I don't know you and I can't travel there just for donuts, but happy birthday!" About 10 years ago, I worked in a small office and a co-worker was telling a boring story to the whole office. My boss went to email me to complain. I was his sounding board, but accidentally replied all to another company-wide email. His message sent to the entire company: "I wish Dana would have emailed me this story so I could delete it." She saw the email a few minutes later, threw keyboard up in the air, grabbed her purse and ran out of the office. My boss had to profusely apologize the next day. "Out of all the stories I've read so far, this one makes me laugh out loud. I can relate. A senior manager has done this with me when we're on conference calls, but he sends texts. I was chatting with a guy who told me about the time he had to conference call with the US while he was traveling to Singapore, and the call was taking place at about 4 a.m. his time. He got up, joined the call, muted himself, and then went about showering, shaving, etc., getting his crap ready for the day. Then when he came back, he listened for about 30 seconds, then unmuted himself to ask a question, so it seemed like he was engaged. His colleague, who was traveling with him, staying 2 rooms down, texted him to ask, "Are you seriously paying attention to this crap?" We use instant messaging, and there have been a few times where someone messages the entire chat group complaining about someone else's work or just them being generally bad at their job. Usually that's quickly followed by, "Oops," as if that's going to make it better. You have to own that crap. If someone calls you on it, just answer back with, "Yeah, I think Becky in accounting is crappy at her job. So what?" Or message just one person, but that one person happens to be screen sharing with the entire group. I worked in a very large government complex, and someone once replied all to an email that was sent to the 500-plus employees with the caption, "This guy looks like Reggie, lol." The picture was of a large, hairy man in a Speedo. I have no idea who Reggie is, but if the caption was accurate, then he should consider buying some hair trimmers. Oh, poor Reggie. That story is very mean if it's about a male coworker, and it's downright awful if it's one of the women with the same name that I know exist. But also kind of an impressive level of cruelty if that is the case. I was working in an office during the Iraq War and get an email from some random private, "Y'all motherfrickers need to shut the heck up." Puzzled by such a blatant attack, I checked who this guy was and who he sent it to. I want to say that he sent it to everyone in command in Iraq, Afghanistan, and a few other places. Some say that private is still doing push-ups to this day. That private is the sole reason we began pulling out of Afghanistan. We had this guy from the main office, Pete, who comes up from time to time. He's an arrogant butthole. I'd decided that I couldn't stand that smug prick within literally 30 seconds of meeting him. Anyway, we had quite a bit of turnover in our department since Pete's last visit, so our boss wanted to schedule a lunch so he could meet everyone. So, his admin sent out a mass email to see who might be interested in lunch on Thursday. I replied back that I wouldn't be coming in because I had a conflict, and then I added, "Plus, Pete's kind of a frickwad." I hadn't realized that I'd hit reply all until I heard the scattered laughter from all over our floor. Our boss came over, invited me into the conference room and said, "I'd appreciate it if in the future you'd let everyone decide on their own terms whether or not Pete is a frickwad." Thankfully, Pete wasn't on the email. Working in the claims department for a huge insurance company, one time a claim handler sent out very personal customer information to the entire company. Every single employee, including the CEO, security staff, building staff, even cleaning staff. So that's bad enough. But then we have this other guy decide to reply all to that email, asking the other guy why he sent him this message, blissfully unaware that the first guy sent it to everyone in the company. So now the first guy responds, still unaware of what happened, telling the second guy he has no idea how that email went to him. So this email thread goes back and forth, reply all, these two geniuses investigating what the frick happened for like 10 replies. They finally decided it was a computer glitch. I don't know how they still have jobs. I'd have fired them for just not knowing how reply all worked. As someone that works in a place that complies to IDOWorkHereLady standards, holy crap, I'm surprised no one in management didn't freak the frick out. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A guy from my training class got fired for poor performance. He knew for months it was coming. On his last day before the obligatory "this isn't working out" meeting, he sent an email to every single person who reports to our work site. I work for a very large company, so hundreds of people estimating conservatively, that said nothing more than, "Remember, no one ever expects the Spanish Inquisition." I guess everyone thought it was prudent to hit reply all to send back their confused responses. For hours. My poor inbox was getting flooded by their stupid replies. That dude knew exactly what he was doing. Random user accidentally sends an email to an entire division of a large government agency saying she'll be late. Cue an hour of people reply-alling, "remove me from this list," and then another hour of reply-alling, "don't reply all." The "don't reply all" loop is hilarious. I've witnessed it several times. I'll never understand the stupidity of several different people saying "stop replying to all" in a reply all email over and over again. Someone got a hold of the addresses that emailed the whole of our university, woke up to 30,000 emails, half of them saying "please remove me from this list," and "guys, they can't remove you, stop replying," and "for frick's sake, you're making it worse." We also got subscribed to a ton of alternative special interest websites, had an Apple account made, which still occasionally makes transactions in Russia. It crashed my phone, the emails were so constant. Okay, this one is technically not reply all, but close enough. The Dutch Railway has a timetable app with push notifications, if your train is delayed or something. One morning last year, basically all people in the Netherlands with this app, that's millions, receive a push message. This is a test message. "Dear colleagues, I checked with software and all messages have been sent and received," followed by, "just so Hio believes it too." Hio is a man's name. "This one dude accidentally sent millions of people a message just to prove his colleague wrong." The GM of my office was having issues with the sales team. He's been known to go overboard. This time he hit a reply all and called one of the sales guys a dirty fricking N-word. Needless to say, once HR got hold of the email, his 27-year career was over. This is off topic, but your reply reminded me of it. When I was working in insurance, we had a new trainee at our office in the claims department who had his first claim and was putting the info into the claims software. Part of this process included typing a condensed version of your conversation with the customer. This particular customer requested that he wanted to pay out of pocket for a bigger rental vehicle, and the new employee typed into the system, "Customer says rental vehicle size on policy is too small and instead wants an N-word car." Obviously, he meant to type "bigger car." Best part about it was the system would not allow edits of the file after 24 hours. He caught his mistake the next day, literally 30 minutes past the edit cutoff time. Co-worker's baby sadly did not make it to childbirth. They announced the funeral. Guy in sales replies all with his, "Congratulations to the deserving couple." Holy frick, that's the most cringeworthy thing in this entire group. When I was in college, I worked at the local ISP. One day out of the blue, the lead system admin calls me. "Hey, do you know how to break into Cobalt RAQ? I need you to delete an email." Small hosting server. I could probably figure something out. Worst case, I can reboot it and reset the password." "Ah, crap. Frick. Never mind, that'll take too long." Click. A bit confused, I just shrugged and went on with my day. Later, I found out the reason for the strange phone call. The customer had been emailing back and forth with the sysadmin and the company owner regarding some technical issue that led to a billing dispute. The sysadmin, having a very short temper, hit reply all without thinking and wrote something along the lines of, "Just because that customer likes to take it up the butt doesn't mean we need to bend over and let him do whatever he wants." He called me to break into the server so he could delete the email before the customer had a chance to read it. Unfortunately, the customer got the email immediately and received a lot of free hosting services. This makes me realize that if a place I get a service from ever slanders me, I could reap the benefit. Time to start being a crappy customer. Actually, no, I don't have the spine to do that. I used to work for one of the largest newspapers in the world. One day, an email came through that was literally sent to the entire company worldwide. It was the contract a new hire who was a significant person at a rival paper was about to sign with a salary that was astronomical. The body text essentially said, "Give him whatever he wants." The woman who accidentally sent the email was kicked out of the building that day. When I read stories like this, I have to wonder, was it an accident or someone so teed off at the deal that they just said, "Screw it"? Guy just sent a, "Hey, listen babe, I just need to finish one last report and then I'll pick you up and frick your brain out in the car, okay? Sounds awesome, right?" Yeah, until we noticed the address he meant to send it to was a subscription service for fake relationships and dirty talk. He was sending a message to a service he pays. He was role-playing. That's more sad than embarrassing. Put every name in the BCC if you're sending an email to a huge group, so no one can hit reply all on accident. If they do, since they can't see the names in the BCC, the reply won't go to anyone but the original sender. Not a reply all, but my friend was using our inter-office instant messenger, meant to send the following message to me. Well, if she stopped trying to frick all of her clients, maybe she'd hit her sales target for once. Yeah, he sent it to her instead. He got fired. Someone at work sent an email asking for donations to his church. He sent it to over 2,000 employees. Then the chaos started. At first, I could see my inbox rise in numbers 5, 10, 25, etc. Suddenly, hundreds of emails poured in with some messages saying, "I don't want to donate and you should not send this email to everyone." No crap! I couldn't decide who was the biggest idiot. The guy who sent the email or the buttholes who replied all. The best email was from the IT director telling us not to reply all because the server was going to crash. And then it crashed. I heard that the guy got fired for soliciting donations, not emailing everyone, and IT got a slap on the hand for allowing everyone to have the access to the all-employees email group. Not my office division, but our oil field construction division sends in bids to secure future jobs. Lowest bidder wins. Winning a bid is sometimes scary because you wonder if you left out any estimation tables. Anyway, our estimator sends in the bid to the proper email, which goes to a secretary. Other competitors use the same email address to send in their bids as well. Imagine our horror when the secretary sends a reply all with a "Thank you for submitting your bid for Project X," and all the other bids are attached to this email. So every competitor sees where each other are increasing estimations and decreasing their costs. It's really both a "today I fricked up" moment and a cringe post. I work at a public institution. We send out our term schedules to departments so chairs, deans, and administrative assistants can review and make necessary changes. We had a chair reply back once the following: "I've made some changes to the schedule. Can you rerun the report and send it to me for my moron of a former secretary?" This is with the dean, chairs of the other departments in that academic college, and administrative assistants of that academic college all copied in, including the word moron. Apparently, she was on her way to being terminated for some reason. She was gone pretty soon afterwards. We never heard back from anybody else in that department either, so I'm not sure what happened. The chair that sent the email remained at the university until he ended up dying from something unexpectedly a few years ago. The head manager of my research and development lab got a spam email about a Windows virus involving a legit Java exe file that had a teddy bear icon. He looks on his computer and lo and behold, it's on his machine. He proceeds to lose his crap and forwarded it to everyone in the company, telling them to delete the file. He did not run this by IT first. IT was not amused. A sign showing a teddy bear with a dagger through its head labeled "The Teddy Bear Slayer" was found on his office door the next morning. Our company uses an IM service that's divided into rooms for each department as well as individual chats. We had a temp one year who flew through her work but did it poorly. She completed something like 24 tasks when the average temp did 5 or 6, but I'd have to stay late or waste my time fixing them. It was too far into our busy season to do anything else. So one night I messaged my coworker, "Ugh, she did like 25 things again. Now I've got to fix them." And she goes, "Ugh, frick." And then a third person goes, "That sucks," and I realized I'd sent the message to our entire department, including the aforementioned temp. First time I ever made a coworker cry. It was so bad. I made up some excuse that we both knew was bullcrap, and I still cringe thinking about it. True story. Worked at Maxis, division of EA, in the late 90s. We had a few temporary employee game testers, including this one girl, around 20 or so. I guess some friend of hers emailed her at work, one of those stupid teenage spams that went something like, "Forward this email to 5 friends and your crush will ask you out. Forward it to 10 friends and your crush will kiss you." So somehow she forwarded it to EA, as in everyone. Every employee at EA, maybe 2,500 people at the time, I suppose. I think our email system allowed a recall function to pull it out of the inboxes of anybody who hadn't read it yet, and I think she tried that, but it was too late. It outraged enough people around the company, including Redwood City HQ, Canada, Florida, and Texas, that I saw her in her boss's office within the hour in tears. We never saw her again. Just last week, an email was mistakenly sent to over 100,000 people in at least a dozen different countries. After about 45 minutes, there were a couple of reply all responses. A decent amount of people replied all saying not to reply all, but didn't realize that the email server was backed up trying to send a few million emails. Some emails took over 10 hours from the time sent for me to receive them. This caused more people to say not to reply all as they hadn't seen anyone else's response saying so yet. Over the next 12 hours, I and every one of the 100,000 people received over 180 emails, all having to do with wondering what the original email was or telling us not to reply all. Over 18 million emails in total. A back-of-the-napkin estimation said it cost the company tens of thousands of dollars. For those asking for the calculation, if all 100,000 people lost 5 minutes of working time to this mess, that is 500,000 minutes, which is 8,333.3 repeating man-hours. I'll assume an average payment of $20 per hour per employee, which is a very low estimate. That's over $166,000 lost. Keep in mind that while not everyone spent 5 minutes reading through and deleting the emails, there were also people like me who lost upwards of 5 to 6 hours due to waiting on emails to get me started on a new set of work. The large consulting firm I worked at was rolling out new laptops company-wide and sent out a mass email outlining the 2 laptops that employees could choose from once they received their notification that it was time to choose. Essentially a standard laptop or a smaller laptop that could be converted into a tablet, a Lenovo Yoga. Several people replied all, but my absolute favorite reply was simply, "I want the one that can be like iPad." All lowercase, 0 punctuation. Top-notch professionalism. An employee emailed if anyone could take his 2 to 10 shift, but he forgot the F in shift, so someone replies to everyone, including our managers and GM, "Wow, that's a long shit." You get the idea. What has made you bail out of sleeping with someone? Went for a Facebook booty call a while back. Her 7 and 9-year-old daughters kept walking in and she told me to just ignore them. She also insisted on blaring George Strait while we went at it. Between her kids walking in and "all my exes live in Texas" blaring from her speakers, I just couldn't do it. I noped the frick out. Her come-on line was, "I know a guy who'll give us all the crystal we can smoke if we frick right in front of him." In high school, freshman year, I dated this girl for about a month. When we did the deed for the first time, she rips off the rubber, says she wants me to drop my seed inside her because she wants to start a family, pulled my pants up and left immediately. Years later, she has a kid with her new boyfriend. Train successfully dodged. A guy used the line, "I want to fill you with my seed" in a pub once, did not let go of my friend for hours. Asked her if she was clean and she said, "Yeah, it's a long story, but a lot of stuff happened, and it turns out now I can't get transmissibles." I thought to myself, you know what, I don't want to do the deed that bad, and I left. This reminds me of a prior roommate who said she doesn't use rubbers because she can't get pregnant and doesn't sleep with people who have transmissible diseases down there, but she wasn't getting tested or having people get tested. She never went into any detail on why or how she knew she couldn't get pregnant, just because of some stuff that had happened, hence you reminding me of her. A couple of months after I moved out, I found out she's pregnant. Yeah, so that plan worked out all kinds of well, huh? Glad I got out of there before a kid was around. Dealing with her was a headache enough, not because of her personal crap or not using rubbers, she was just crazy. Guy I worked with walked around telling everyone that he F's his girlfriend without a rubber because guys can't get warts down there. I told him that not only has he basically told everyone that his girlfriend has warts down there, but he probably has them now too because men can indeed get them. It's just not as likely to turn into cancer for them, and now he'll have to use a rubber with everyone for the rest of his life or risk infecting them with something that could give them cancer. Of course, I'm the bad guy for telling him that. We were in his car fooling around after leaving the bar together. I asked why we couldn't go back to his house. He said his wife was home. Nope. He didn't want to wake her up. How considerate of him. Well, we don't know if they had an open relationship, but I'd say the odds aren't good from what we've heard. Better luck at the next bar. This is my favorite story to tell. I'm a type 1 diabetic and my nickname where I'm from is diabetes, so everyone knows I have it even though some people would still be like, "Oh, you're actually a diabetic?" Anyways, I met this girl at a house party one of my friends was throwing. This was back in 2010, 2011. As the night goes on and drinks get consumed, we get all love drunk and go to bang it out. About halfway through our session, she randomly kicks me off and pushes me away. Stop, I can't do this. I freak out, thinking that I've done something horribly wrong. What's going on? What happened? She looks straight at me and I crap you not, she says to me, I can't catch diabetes. All I could think to say was, you've got to be fricking kidding me. Her incredible response, and again, I swear on my inability to produce insulin, I'm not making any of this up, this is word for word burned into my memory, I can't get diabetes. It's like cancer, I just can't catch it. By the time she said cancer, I had my pants back on and was running down the stairs. I get back to the party and all of my friends are like, whoa, look who it is, how was it? You will never believe what the frick just happened to me. In conclusion, my type 1 diabetes not only blocked me, but apparently is a transmissible disease similar to cancer? She also wasn't lying when she said it's like cancer. Neither of them are communicable. In fact, maybe those were all separate statements. I can't do this. I can't catch diabetes. It's like cancer. I used to have hepatitis, but I swear I'm clean now. A lot of people have remarked to me that Hep C is treatable now. Let me tell you, when you've both just got back from a raging party in college, everyone's drunk and in the buff, and you're collectively about to get your Discovery Channel on, this is high on the list of things you don't want to hear. Are you sure? I'm positive. I fricking knew it. First time at this girl's apartment, we were hanging out for a while and she tells me she's always had this fantasy about being with a black guy. I figure that being one was to my advantage this situation, so cool, definitely going to get some kind of action. We're making out for like 20 minutes and she gets undressed and I get undressed and we start getting really close to each other and she goes, wait, stop. So I back off and she goes, no, keep going. So I position myself back over her and she goes, please don't. So I get up, done with it at this point, and she gets mad. You're ruining it. You're supposed to force me to. It's been like 8 years and still nothing as crazy as being an unwitting participant in someone else's, forced fantasy. She clearly had a very specific fantasy in mind, but she's at fault for not bringing it up beforehand. Finding out she's pregnant and still with the guy. Well, at least you knew you weren't going to get her pregnant. At the bar one night and it was pretty packed. I finally made it to the bar and this definite cougar comes over and starts hitting on me hard. I talk her up a bit but play it cool. She's not bad looking, but I'm not sure if I'm down just yet. I finally ask her what she'll have to drink. I wanted to just go ahead and buy her the drink, so maybe she'd back off a bit since I knew that's what she wanted. Got her some sugary mixed shot and she threw it back, leaned in lightning fast and laid her lips on me. I pulled back after a second as this hot younger chick ran up and screamed, "Mom, get out of here! You're ruining my night!" Instantly turned around and got away from that fricked up family reunion. We had a party at my house with roommates. I passed out sitting on the couch. I woke up with a raging hard-on and my roommate's wife, in only her pink bathrobe, was rubbing my wang through my pants while her husband was lustfully watching. I jumped up, spilled my beer all over myself and went to bed. Did you move out? Cause I'd imagine it would be pretty frickin' awkward around there after that. I moved out a few months later, we never spoke of it. I found they replaced me with a cam girl they met online, which means my old room must be her new studio. Prior to divorce, wife wanted to have unprotected fun out of nowhere, after literally 6 months of refusing to put out. And I suspected she was trying to get pregnant to prevent the impending separation. Nope. Or she'd barebacked someone else and wanted you to foot the bill. I felt something rubbing against me while I was inside, and after feeling around in there, I removed a very grey, very soggy, old tampon. That was the end of the night for me. I mean, you probably saved her a trip to the ER. I was the noped-on person, and I don't blame the dude. Short version, I started crying about my ex and threw up. I literally never throw up from drinking, so that was a weird one for me. At least we were in my place, and I made it to the bathroom. Yeah, he noped, and I cried and begged him not to leave. After that, I decided drinking with a broken heart is a bad idea. Well, at least you have the hindsight to learn from the experience. Hope things are going better for you now. A girl I used to date and I were doing the deed in the dark. Unbeknownst to me, my nose started bleeding. I went to grab her chest, and they were wet as frick. It took me a while to realize what was going on, but once I did, I immediately stopped. It was pretty embarrassing as she was covered in blood. It was a really hot summer with no AC, so apparently she just thought I was sweating intensely. asking me to just take her when she wasn't expecting it. To be clear, she had a fantasy of being taken against her will, whereas it was my very first time to be getting it in, so to speak. I was not okay with it. Finding out the guy, who at the moment had me in a very uncompromising position, got off on the idea of forcefully infecting others with a transmissible disease. I didn't stick around long enough to see if he was actually serious. I stopped hooking up for a good long while after that one. Got to his place, walked into a room and saw that it was completely bare except for a couple of lights and a tarp spread across the floor. Immediately turned around and walked out the door, got in my car and left. Don't know what the tarp was for. He was either going to murder me or wanted me to pee on him. Either way, nope. Nope.
Do you like Huey Lewis and the News?
Is that a raincoat?
The dog jumped on the bed and started to lick the girl down there, and she didn't push the dog away.
She took off her shoes and the smell could have killed a horse. It nearly killed me. Smelled like a hobo in a recycling room. The mood was killed. I was nearly killed. I left both disgusted and concerned. Pretty girl, though. Almost lost my virginity, but I didn't because of Pokemon. I was a teenage virgin in a long-distance relationship. Boyfriend calls, says his parents will be out of town and I should come over. I scramble, trying to figure out what people wear to do this, and we didn't even have Walmart in my town to buy lingerie, let alone somewhere classy. I make the 2-hour drive, we started making out in his bed, get a little hot and heavy, and I undress down to my hottest undies. He gets up and goes to his desk, and I assume he's getting a rubber, which got him a huge bonus point from me, because it was my first time and I didn't really know how to ask about stuff like that. Instead, he pulls out a sketchbook, beams at me, opens to a page, and goes, "See this drawing of Charmander I made?" I say, "Yes," and then he comes back to bed and starts flipping through his sketchbook, showing me his Pokemon drawings while I sit there in my undies, stunned by the turn of events. We do this for a good 15 minutes, then later he tries to get us started again, but I was just not having it. We fall asleep, still virgins, and woke up to watch Power Rangers because why the frick not at that point, right? When this girl I was hooking up with kept talking about how babies brighten her day, then she insisted we didn't use protection. Wise move, my friend. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Had a great first date with this one, a blast. Went back to her place, started to hit it doggy. She reaches over to her nightstand and pulls out a rolled-up pouch, unrolls it and pulls out a syringe. Asks me if I've ever tried smack. Instant limp eggplant. I broke the frick out so quick I don't even remember getting dressed.
This thread is pretty much a PSA to keep your private parts clean. So many filthy eggplants and manky tacos. Do people not wash?
I have a few instances I can think of. Number 1, while in the middle of losing my virginity after sneaking a boy into my room, in the wee hours of the morning he suddenly jumped up and started pacing the floor. He really needed to crap, so I said the bathroom was immediately outside my door to the right. He opens the door and then slams it shut. My dad was in the kitchen, which was in clear view of my bedroom door. He ended up just standing there and crapping himself. I'll never forget that smell. And I didn't have air freshener, so I sprayed some flying insect spray that had a sweet smell to it. Anyway, when the coast was clear, I escorted him to the bathroom where he gets in the shower. I had to make it look like it was me showering, therefore, I had to sit in the bathroom while his crappy boxers stunk up the place. He gets out, puts his boxers in a few plastic bags, and changes into fresh clothes. Then he tries to continue doing the deed. I was like,
You can go out the window?
We still keep in touch on Facebook and he uses that as a funny story to tell our mutual friends. Number 2, I picked up a dude at a bar who was hands down the funniest person I'd ever met, and that was severely attractive to me. It also helped that he was just generally attractive. While going down, he asked me if I could take some pictures of him with his phone. I grab it and as I'm taking the picture, his girlfriend sends him a goodnight text. I just hand him the phone, and he lets out an exhausted sigh. She won't stop telling me she loves me and I don't want to lead her on. Okay, kind of uncomfortable, but we keep doing the deed. He starts to get very rough with me, biting everywhere, making my lips bleed, calling me a whore, basically using me as a doll. Which would have been fine if discussed beforehand. I don't like to be ambushed. Then he grabs me by the throat and demanded I told him I loved him. Freaked me the frick out because of his crazy eyes. I had this intense sense of dread that's hard to describe, but it felt like in that moment I was in danger, so I just pushed him off me, grabbed my clothes, completely wordless, and literally walked into the apartment complex hallway in the bath where I got dressed in the stairs. Number 3, and last but not least, the guy who, while I was lying undressed on his bed waiting for him, proceeds to casually pull out a syringe from his nightstand and shoots up right in front of me. He slid onto the floor giggling, and I just got dressed and left without him even noticing. Very blatant, very obvious warts down there. He said they were skin tags. Dude, I know warts when I see them, and I don't need that stuff in my butt. Did the deed on the 3rd date. Things were going well, and then as we're lying there, she says, "Now that we're in a relationship, I need to be the one in charge. That means no adult magazines, and I need to access your Facebook account and email so that I know you aren't cheating on me." I noped out of that one.
An honest question. Did she think you couldn't get like a million new Gmail addresses for any hush-hush stuff even if you gave her your main address? Oh, and zero trust is a wonderful thing to build a relationship on.
I was going down on a lady on her couch when she stopped me. She rolled onto the floor and reverse army crawled into her dog's bed and told me to take her there. Her 2 Cocker Spaniels were now awake, standing at attention on the side of their bed. I noped the frick out of that scene. Look, folks, if you're doing the deed and are both into this, then as far as I'm concerned, you can do whatever you want in your own home. But it is a bold move to try to move into this without discussing it with your partner first. Met a girl at a club and went back to her house. Everything is going fine, nothing out of the ordinary, until her housemate comes home. I was like, maybe we should stop, or at least close the door? She replies with,
"Oh no, it's okay. He likes to listen and sometimes he watches from the hallway."
She wasn't joking either. I put my clothes back on and walk out, and there he was, just giving himself a good time in the frickin' hallway. I was on vacation in the Dominican shortly after graduating high school with 5 of my friends. Met this cute Bolivian girl in our resort, and we hit it off. A few hours later, I'm in her room. We're going at it. She repositions onto her hands and knees and tells me to put it in her butt. I ask for lube and she hands me a bottle. I was giddy with excitement because I'd always wanted to do this. I lather up both of us and slowly slide it in, but she had clearly done this a few times before now. Now I'm pumping her hard and have thrown caution to the wind. We hear a keycard go into her door and the handle turn. She frantically whispers, "Novio," boyfriend, and I realize that I have 3 seconds before I get my butt beat. I pull out at lightning speed and she yelps, liquid crap sprays all over my stomach and wang, and I grab my shorts off the floor and run out of the balcony and hop the ledge. Thank God that room was on the 1st floor. I don't think the guy chased me, but I sprinted away. Still very much in the buff and definitely covered in crap. I cleaned myself in the ocean and hit the bar. I just love the image of her boyfriend coming in and seeing her undressed on the bed with a stream of crap all over the mattress.
I wonder if the absolute shock of seeing that maybe distracted him from realizing the full context of the situation.
We should get you to a doctor. That's the 3rd time this week. Went to a very alternative punk girl's place for a booty call. She said she wanted to take a bath together and I was all for that. She goes to run water while I finish my drink. We're getting into it and head to the bathroom. We strip down and I get in the bathtub and sit down. Then I looked up at her and she was pulling razor blades out of a cabinet. She wanted to cut me and have me cut her. Nope. I have never gone from soaking wet to fully clothed and walking down a sidewalk so quickly in my life. I ghosted that girl and I have no regrets. She started rubbing my chest in the exact same way my ex used to, and I realized I was still super in love with her and started to cry. She noped the frick out of there. It was after a hookup. I wanted to leave and he tried to cling on to me saying, "Oh, please don't go. I want to show you to my roommate."
Spoiler alert, his roommate was in the freezer in pieces.
Her son coming into the room and sitting down to play Xbox and her telling me it was okay to keep going.
Playing Xbox, he's probably used to people fricking his mum by that point.
When she took off her undies, it immediately smelled like 8 cans of shark crap. I told her I needed a cigarette and hit Mach 3 out of there. She had 5 stars tattooed just above her hoo-ha. Wasn't going to lay pipe, but with ratings like that. I let a woman take me home from a pub here in Edinburgh. She seemed a little bit sleazy, but she had a J-cup. Honestly, that had sort of got stuck in my eye and my imagination. When we got to our place, it was about 2 a.m. There were like 7 kids running around the flat, eating cake and candy and drinking iron brew straight from 2-litre bottles. They were, most of them, about 12 years or less of age, except one sullen 16 to 17-year-old boy who sprawled in the chair staring at me, and a dog running around. I went to the toilet and there was dog crap in the bathtub. The wheels for my mega bosom fantasy night had just fallen off the wagon. I sort of didn't know what to do at first. I didn't want to stay, but I didn't want to tell her in front of our little tribe that I wanted to bail, and then have to sit there and wait for the taxi to turn up on the outskirts of the city, in a housing estate and risk some sort of confrontation that could turn into a horror show. So I went to bed and fooled around a little bit and then claimed to be too drunk. She drove me home in the morning. No way I was getting involved in that scene. My ex didn't have a rubber, so he wanted to use a sandwich bag instead. I left with so many unanswered questions in my head like, did this guy really ask to use a sandwich bag? Is that a thing? Are people really using sandwich bags as protection? During my drunken single heyday, I met a woman at a bar during my friend's birthday outing with whom I hit it off. We even made out in one of the restrooms. Sleazy, I know. We get back to her place and she informs me that her roommate will be home soon. Turns out he was her on and off again boyfriend who had helped her, financially, to get through her cancer treatment. Overwhelmed and quite uncomfortable, I decided to bolt, despite her insistence. After I left her apartment, I managed to get myself lost in the building and couldn't find a viable exit. I ended up having to crawl out of a window and managed to get out onto the street side near the building. I walked toward the main drag and ran into the birthday boy. We had a drink and parted ways. Single life in New York City never gets old. Spooning after first date wild fun times, he hugs me like a vice and says he's going to take me to Vegas tomorrow and we'll get married. He was dead serious. I was a puff of smoke. For the train of people saying, "You got Mosby'd," and living in the slim hope that I can resurrect my inbox, here's the tail end of this little snapshot into my fun time nopes. I wasn't Mosby'd that time anyway. Whatever the female corollary to "don't put your wang in crazy" is, it applied to this sitch instead. He harassed me for weeks, but silver lining also revealed himself as one of the greatest insult artists on the planet. I wasn't even fully terrified half the time because his diatribes were genius. A few months later, he had found a new target and married her. They're raising his young daughter together and he continues his job as a paramedic, who might just roll up to your car wreck if you live in Atlanta. Every time I see an ambulance from that particular service, I still hold my breath. Managers, what is a Karen experience like, and what was your worst experience?
Oh, I loved Karens when I was managing. Being able to say, "Actually, I am the manager," followed by, "Sorry, that's company policy," always results in a flustered Karen leaving in a huff and a much relieved crew.
Yep, then I would get,
"Well, give me your boss's cell number."
"Absolutely not. There's no way in hell I'm giving out his number. You can come in tomorrow when he's here or call us."
"I'll give him the corporate number."
Corporate doesn't give a crap about Karen complaints, and if they do follow up, I explain the situation. Give them the corporate number of your competitor. How delightfully evil. Delightfully devilish, Seymour. Corporate doesn't care, true, but they will solve the problem by giving Karen free stuff. "Sorry you had a problem, Mom. Here's a card for 3 free pizzas." My worst Karen was a beauty pageant mum, wanted me to pay for an ad in the back of the patent flyer for $200, claimed she ordered all the time. That's about 20 orders a year, Karen, before I even count expenses. The pageant isn't even being held in my area. Sorry, Karen. When I was working at a bookstore, my mum once called our corporate number because my coworker wouldn't release my work schedule. She was crazy. I bought that coworker a coffee.
Oh, the best is when they ask for the manager, but you are the manager.
It's not as awesome as it sounds. After that, you have to sit there and listen to them whine, knowing full well that if you work for a chain, they'll just file a complaint with corporate, get free products, and you'll have to see them again and possibly get written up. Happened before I became manager, but once while I was serving at Steak and Shake, customer had a coupon for burger, fries, and a shake for X amount of money, can't remember the price anymore. Anyway, on the coupon it specifically stated that cheese on the burger was 39 cents upcharge, although it did have a picture of the burger with cheese on it. Lady threw a fit in the dining room that I was treating her unfairly. It was false advertising, etc., etc. I told her I agree it's false advertising with the picture, but the text specifically states the upcharge and unfortunately I can't do anything about it. The lady at the next table over heard everything and literally got up and put 50 cents on the table to cover it and said something to the effect of,
"I'll pay for your damn cheese if you just shut up."
This teed the lady off even more. My manager obviously sensed the issue and came out, took the cheese up charge of the bill. Like, what the frick, Karen?
Love how the other lady, I think I'll call her Laren, is like the anti-Karen. She probably has daughters.
Oh, to be so bold as to call Karens and Kens out when you see them acting out in public. One day, YouTube narrator, one day you'll realize your full heroic potential. I once had a customer tell me, "frick you," after arguing with me over 5 cents. He apparently rounded the 3 down, which made me owe him 5 cents. After about 2 minutes of arguing, he stormed off. For the record, the cash register told me exactly how much change to give. Work at a vacuum repair shop. People don't pay attention to their vacuum cleaners as much as you'd think. I can't tell you how many times someone's come in to pick up their vacuum and says, "Oh, this isn't mine," or "Mine didn't have scratches down the side." I can tell you it is, and it came in with all those scratches on the side. After the first 2 times it happened to me, we started taking pictures of the unit with serial numbers and customer info, send them home with the serial number, and require them to bring it back for pickup. Despite the evidence, we've had a lady close to tears because we didn't have her vacuum. Even with the pictures we had of it at drop-off, her information and the matching serial numbers. Sure, it's a big conspiracy. We just love taking in vacuums and switching all the information around because it's fun. People need to pay more attention.
I used to work at Geek Squad and once had this happen when a lady came in to pick up her laptop. She explained that it was all of her information, but the laptop itself wasn't hers. It's like they took all my stuff and put it into a different laptop. Spoke with her daughter. Turns out she was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. That was my first experience with the disease, and man did it hit hard. And she wasn't even a relative.
I had a male version of a Karen, a Ken. Fairly wealthy, very entitled, and just a butt to work with. We were the contractors doing an extensive remodel of his home, and one of the light fixtures his designers chose was this expensive, custom-order chandelier with a no-return policy. We made sure he signed off on the spec sheet with a picture of the fixture and the no-return policy highlighted. When the chandelier was delivered, he insisted he'd never seen it before and definitely hadn't approved it. He kept insisting on this even after we showed him his signature on the order, even suggesting we'd forged it to cover our mistake on our part. Yeah, because I'm going to go way out of my way to make my life more difficult like that. I used to work part-time at a bakery inside a grocery store. I dealt with my fair share of Karens during this time. Just to paint this picture of how it would work, we had a binder with laminated copies of 100 different designs the decorators did regularly. A customer would look through the book, pick a design they wanted, and fill me in on the details of when they wanted it by, what size, what flavor, if any color changes were necessary, etc. Our decorators would come in at 7 a.m. and stay for however long it took to complete their orders, so usually they were gone by early to mid-afternoon. The bakery closed along with the store at 9 p.m. One day, around 8:15 or 8:20, a woman comes in and says she needs a cake. I figure she's referring to the cakes sitting in our cooler, which we keep at the ready in case anybody just wants something quick and simple. So I motion to the cooler and ask if she sees anything she likes. Apparently, I'm a gosh darn brilliant comedian because she starts laughing and goes,
"No, sweetie, I need a wedding cake."
Alright, no big deal. I grab an order form and take down her information, then ask what day she needs it for.
Tonight.
Mind you, the store is closing in 40 minutes, so even if I could decorate a cake, I wouldn't be able to help her. I tell her that there's no decorators present at the moment, but I could make sure it was ready for her first thing in the morning. She's clearly upset by this, but says that'd be fine. I continue taking her order and ask her what size she'd like. Our bakery was not an upscale joint and our prices reflect that. Just about everything comes in frozen. So for our cakes, they come in a variety of predetermined sizes. She pulls out her phone and thrusts it in my face, saying, "Whatever that is." On the screen is a very beautiful cake, smooth white frosting, 7 to 8 tiers, decorations made in fondant and blown sugar. Before I even continue taking the order and dash her hopes when she sees the finished product, I tell her that just wouldn't be possible. I didn't mean to offend our decorators, but I told her the truth. Most of them were exceptionally gifted home bakers who didn't have formal training in terms of a culinary program or decorating school. I then politely refer her to a more upscale bakery that I knew of that's more equipped to help her than we were. Then the dreaded 6 words came.
"Can I speak to your manager?"
At this point in time, I'd been working at that bakery for a little over a year, so I was capable enough to close the department on my own. As such, I was the only one there. I told her this, but offered to leave a note with the customer's name and number so my manager could call her back.
"Fine then, let me talk to the store manager."
There were anywhere between 1 to 3 store managers who oversaw the entire grocery store and all its departments on staff and night. So I go to our phone and page a store manager over to the bakery department. The whole time we're waiting, she's staring daggers into me. A manager I was fairly friendly with came to the counter in a few minutes and asked what the problem was. I briefed her before she went to talk to the customer. The second we get over there, the customer starts spewing lies about me, how I was rude and refusing to help her. I tried to defend myself, but the manager just told me to keep doing my closing work out back. 10 minutes later, she comes back, shaking her head and rubbing her temples. That witch was crazy. Customer service industry is just a blast, guys.
Wedding planning really brings out the worst in some people.
If you need the cake right now, I guess very little planning was involved.
Wait, she wanted a multi-tiered cake done that night? From a supermarket? Wow!
I was the only person on shift, which made me the de facto manager. 5 minutes before closing, a woman comes in and is so angry that we don't have any decaf. She demands to speak to the manager, and I tell her that's me because I'm the only one here, and the coffee pots are cleaned for the night because it's 5 minutes to close. No, I'm sorry, I can't make another pot just for her. There's another place around the corner. She screams at me, telling me she's going to
find a real manager and get my hoary butt fired.
Throws half a cup of cappuccino machine sludge at me and starts to look like she's going to jump the counter. I'm holding a hammer under the counter, thinking, don't do it, don't do it. I pick up the phone like I'm going to call the cops. She leaves. I lock the door. She comes back and runs face first into the glass door like a bird. Oh, sweet, sweet karma. I hope that for comedic effect she also left a full face print of makeup on the window, and to warn off other foul predators.
Did she give herself brain damage? Fall down? Make eye contact? That's alpha as frick. We need the thrilling conclusion to this saga.
Oh, she fell. At that point, I thought, okay, I may be looking at a middle-class white lady's first time trying serious substances. And I did regretfully have to call the cops to get her so that I could go home without her trying to eat my face or something. She screamed the B word, the C word, implied that I did the deed with men for money, the whole time while I waited for them. When they came and started talking to her, she yelled at them and then calmed the frick down once she realized what was happening. They walked her away from the store. After that, I have no idea because I jogged home pretty quick. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The staff didn't know it at the time, but our ketchup dispenser was empty. A boy, aged 10-ish, was just smashing down on the handle trying to get ketchup, but none was being dispensed. A staff member noticed the kid smashing finally, so I went out to see what was going on. Oh, the ketchup is empty. I'll get a new bag from the kitchen. Give me 2 minutes and I'll be right back with some new ketchup. I remove the empty container, take it back to the kitchen, clean the dispenser, and place in a new bag. Take it out to the condiment stand and get met by a Karen.
Why did you take the ketchup away from my son?
The ketchup was empty, ma'am, so I replaced the bag.
Why did you take the ketchup away? Go get your manager.
Okay, 1 minute. I walk about 2 meters, turn around, and introduce myself as the manager.
Why did you take the ketchup away from my son?
Mom, please lower your voice. The ketchup was empty. I explained to your son that I needed to take it back to the kitchen and refill it.
No, you didn't. I was standing here the whole time. You took the ketchup away from my son.
Ma'am, please lower your voice. You were not with your son. He was here alone, trying to get ketchup, which was empty.
Don't you tell me what to do. Do you know who you're dealing with?
Nope. Mom, please get your belongings and leave this establishment. Cue the screaming and yelling part of the encounter.
I will not leave this establishment. I'm going to burn this place down.
Other patrons are visibly upset with what they're witnessing. Police are called. Karen gives a statement. Police question me. I give a statement. Karen told the police that I struck her son, pushed him out of the way, and moved the ketchup to an area in which her son couldn't get access to the ketchup. I disputed the claim and offered to provide video evidence with sound of what actually happened. Police watch the video once, thank me, and walk out to the eating area. Ma'am, does your son have someone who can look after him?
His father is at work right now.
Okay, you're being placed under arrest for making threats and a false police report. More yelling, threats, and now tears. In the end, she was charged with making the false police report, but not the threats, and received a lifetime ban from not just our restaurant, but the entire mall our restaurant was located in. I felt kind of bad, not for the Karen, but for her son. He has to live with that. Eating at a cheap, greasy spoon kind of diner that had been around since the 50s. All the meat is frozen, pretty much nothing but the coffee or eggs are made fresh. You know what you're getting when you come to this place. A couple comes in with their 2 young boys, I'd estimate 6 to 7 for either. Mum makes a minor scene about not wanting a booth, wanting a table. There's an entire wall of booths and multiple tables, but she specifically wants the one in the middle of the room that needs to be bussed since the people that were using it just left. She makes a minor scene about having to wait for the one busboy who was handling the entire front of house to come take care of it, when the manager went and got him to take care of it immediately. At this point, I'm not paying too much attention, but they're literally sitting right next to us. They order appetizers, steak, shakes for the kids, etc. Their waitress is handling several other tables at the same time, like a third of the floor, and serves some coffee and sliced pie to an elderly couple that came in after the family. The Karen throws an absolute hissing crap fit because, "We were here first, how come they're getting their orders first?" Manager comes back out and explains in the most placid tones possible that multiple fried goods and steak take time to cook, but hot coffee is available all day and sliced pie is in a display up front, so there's no prep time. Karen calms down, but fumes. Doesn't allow the boys to get their food, buffet option, until her and Dad's food comes to the table. Once the adult food arrives, Karen just starts tucking in. Both boys are just tall enough to see over the edge of the buffet, but not nearly enough to reach tongs or reasonably serve themselves. A waitress from another section sees them struggling and comes over to help, asking what they want on their plates. Karen flies to her feet and makes a big scene this time about, "How dare you tell my kids what they can and cannot eat? Who do you think you are handling their food?" Cue manager coming out again, following demands to complain directly. Waitress is an older woman, we're talking white hair, and is nearly in tears thinking that she's done something terrible. Manager asks her to go chill in the back for a bit while she smooths things over with Karen. Karen demands balloons, they had them as a special birthday thing, for her kids. They get balloons, Karen calms down, husband and kids are pretty quiet. Kids seem visibly embarrassed, husband is acting like this is pretty normal. Husband's steak comes out last. He's unenthusiastic about it, and Karen calls for the manager a fourth time to chew her out over the steak being overdone, dry, etc. They send it back and demand another, then a third. Let me reiterate, this is a place you go for like greasy burgers and fries, fish and chips, etc. Steak is on the menu, but realistic expectations and reason means you're not expecting high quality. You're getting what you pay for. Manager just kept calm and kept apologizing for their suboptimal experience, but beyond filling minor low-cost demands, the balloons for example, they didn't offer up much. When Karen basically screamed that they would never be coming back, the manager was just like, "Sorry to hear that, have a nice night." Absolute pro at grey rocking. Bestest of the best interactions I ever had, Karen griped about not wanting to pay the price for the services performed on her computer, which was exactly the price quoted when she dropped it off and which she had signed for. She demanded to speak to the service manager. I called him from the back. Service manager listened to her spiel as to how she should get a lower price because, irrelevant pea-brained reason. Service manager made eye contact with me over her shoulder. I didn't react. He said no. Price quoted was the price that should be charged. She said that was unacceptable and she would be complaining to the owner, who was a good friend of hers. Service manager observed that she was evidently not a good friend since that he, or me, was the person she was originally speaking with when she asked for the service manager. Her face was glorious and made the whole thing worthwhile. This kind of interaction seems to be a sort of dream for a lot of people. Perhaps it will motivate all of you to perform to your utmost at your job so that you too can own the store that a Karen lies about her connections to. I'm not in retail anymore, but I was managing a popular mid-range handbag store. Think typical Karen bag, about $200 to $400. Anyway, most customers were fantastic. This one woman was this Shrek-looking large red-headed lady who stomped in and demanded that we repair her 20-year-old bag for free. And if we couldn't do that, she demanded that we exchange this old ratty smelly 20-year-old bag for a brand new one for her. Recently, policy changes had resulted in new prices for this service, but free repairs had about a 1-year warranty on a new bag, not a 20-year-old one. I tell her as such. I was pretty young to have the role I did, so she, dissatisfied with my answer, asked to speak to a manager. I told her I'm the manager, and she began turning as red as her hair. She screamed and yelled about how she'll call corporate and never shop here again. Well, that sounds like a real loss, losing a customer that's too cheap to repair a 20-year-old bag and hasn't bought new from us in just as long. I give her my best crap-eating grin and say, "I'm so sorry, that's just the policy." She demands corporate's number. I give her the customer service line that you can find on Google, unbeknownst to her. She huffs away, forgetting her keys on the counter. She's halfway out and she remembers, turns around, red as a beet, huffs in my smiling face and snatches the keys off the counter. It was hilarious. She came back months later, worked with a different person on the team and didn't even look my way. Oh, heck yes. Buckle up. I worked as a manager at a chain barbecue restaurant. We'll call it Popular Charlie's. There was this lady who we called Nacho Lady. I'll get into why. She was that kind of overweight, holistic living, anti-vax, essential oil military wife. "My 2-year-old daughter who I talk to like a coherent adult is going to change the world" type lady, with all the Karen aesthetics to match. We all dreaded her when she came in. We call her Nacho Lady because whenever she comes by, she orders our nachos at our takeout area. No big deal, but she would want everything on the side, which again, no big deal in most situations because I understand that nachos get soggy, especially to go. But what some people don't like or understand is seeing the actual proportions of everything. 2 ounces of anything really isn't that much. That goes for the cheese, chili, beans, nacho sauce, all the works. Even though it's all proportioned equally, the customer doesn't like what they see, and that's where the backlash began with the Nacho Lady, and then the Karen moment started happening. She didn't like the actual proportions, and wanted and demanded more, but refused to pay for it. Our takeout specialists were good enough at standing up for themselves and the rules. Of course, she didn't accept it, so she had to speak to a manager, myself or 2 others, depending on the day. She would also order 2 kids' meals, pork sandwiches and fries. Again, no big deal, but she was very particular about this one as well. The pork had to be dry, no barbecue sauce, in a separate container. Kids' buns toasted, which we don't usually do. The fries had to be dropped as soon as she walks in the door so they're crispy and fresh for when she takes them all the way home. Because of her extreme specifications, it got to the point where only a manager was allowed to take her order, and only a manager could review the order with her. This was always the most nerve-wracking part because she would sit down at our waiting table in the takeout area and open every single box and inspect everything, which we would typically do in the first place, but the way she went about it was very Karen. This was when all the issues would start to happen. Fries were never hot and fresh and crispy enough, sent back to get new ones. Not enough of the portioned pork for the kids' sandwich, demand more. Not enough cheese sauce and shredded cheese, demand more. Not enough tortilla chips, you know, the rest. The list goes on, and to top it all off, she somehow got a hold of a crap ton of free kids' meal coupons that were blank, meaning no manager signature, dates, or any sort of validation that she got legit. A coupon is no big deal, but a typical coupon can only be used one at a time with one transaction. But Karen, being a Karen, demanded that we use 2 out of a giant stack so she gets her kids' meals for free. This got to the point where things had to be run by the GM, even if it means calling him on his day off. He was a bit of a pushover and always allowed it, but she started costing us money. It wasn't feasible for her to keep coming back and having her as a customer, because 19 out of 20 times we would end up having to send stuff back to the kitchen, which would get wasted. My other manager, Billy Joe, was a fierce B-word that never let anyone walk over her. She was awesome. She finally stepped up and made a call over the GM's order and 86'd her. When that moment came, we all huddled in the office and watched the security cameras as Billy Joe ripped her a new one. That was an unforgettable day. I left and got out of the restaurant industry and management because of how toxic that field can be. But I do love that I have a Karen story. I worked at an REI for a while. One story comes to mind involving an ex-Marine who worked at our store fixing bikes. He had to run to the back to grab a part, and as he was going back to the bike shop on the other side of the store, a customer who was already pretty loud and aggressive with everyone decided to grab my coworker by the arm and very aggressively try to spin him around to face him. Marine training kicked in, and the next thing I know, angry customer man is laying in the remains of a display about 8 feet away. Of course, he jumps up screaming and yelling that he's going to sue us and get my coworker fired, and we're all going to jail, yada yada yada. Manager comes out, heard the story, looks at the security footage, and tells the customer he's never allowed to grab employees like that. He's welcome to call the cops if he would like, because she's willing to press charges against him for assault, and he was banned from our store. No one at the store was upset about losing that customer. He was kind of notorious for being a jerk and constantly trying to abuse our return policy. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.